A single father's desperate gamble for redemption leads to an impossible choice. Accept help from a billionaire who sees through his broken facade, or lose everything, including his daughter. This is a story about second chances, hidden love, and the courage it takes to stop running from your own life. If you've ever felt like you were drowning while everyone else seemed fine, this one's for you. Before we dive in, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city name. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. Now, let's begin. The alarm didn't go off. Or maybe it did, and Adrian Cole just didn't hear it. Either way, when he finally cracked his eyes open and saw the red numbers glowing 6:47 on his nightstand, his stomach dropped like a stone. No, 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 no! He threw the blanket off and practically fell out of bed, his knee connecting hard with the corner of the dresser. Pain shot up his leg, but he barely noticed. He was already late. Emma's bus came at 7:15, which meant she needed to be out the door by 7:10, which meant breakfast should have been done 10 minutes ago. He stumbled into the hallway, still wearing the same wrinkled shirt he'd collapsed in last night after finally finishing that presentation at midnight. His mouth tasted like coffee and regret. "Emma!" he called out, his voice rough. "Emma, baby, we gotta move. Why didn't you wake me up?" Silence. His heart rate kicked up another notch. He pushed open her bedroom door, already forming apologies, already calculating how late he'd be to work if he had to drive her himself. She was standing in the middle of her room, fully dressed. Purple leggings, the unicorn shirt she loved, her backpack already on both shoulders. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail that was definitely crooked, but honestly wasn't half bad for a 7-year-old doing it herself. In her right hand, she held his car keys. Adrian stopped in the doorway. Emma looked at him with those big hazel eyes, Sarah's eyes, and didn't say anything. Just stood there, waiting, ready, like she'd been ready for a while. Something cracked open in Adrian's chest. His voice came out quieter than he meant it to. "How long have you been up?" She shrugged, a small movement that tried to be casual but wasn't. "I don't know. A while." "Did you eat?" "I had a granola bar." "Just a granola bar?" Another shrug. Adrian ran his hand over his face, feeling the stubble he hadn't had time to shave in 3 days. When had this become normal? When had his 7-year-old daughter learned to dress herself, feed herself, and grab his keys because she knew that he'd oversleep again? "I can make you something real quick," he said, already moving toward the kitchen. "Eggs, maybe, or—" "We don't have time." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact. Not accusing, just stating a fact. "The bus comes in 23 minutes. 23 minutes. Not 20, not 25. 23. Because she'd been watching the clock while he slept through his alarm. "Right." Adrian grabbed the keys from her hand, trying to smile. "Okay, yeah, let's go." They made it to the bus stop with 4 minutes to spare. Emma climbed the steps without looking back, found her usual seat by the window, and pressed her small hand against the glass in their goodbye wave. Adrian waved back, standing there in his wrinkled shirt and yesterday's jeans, while the other parents, the ones who had their lives together, the ones who probably woke up to actual alarm clocks and made actual breakfasts, avoided eye contact. The bus pulled away. Adrian stood there for another minute, just breathing, before he walked back to his car and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. The clock on the dashboard read 7:18. He was supposed to be at his desk by 8. He hadn't showered, hadn't shaved, hadn't even checked if he had a clean shirt anywhere. The presentation he'd stayed up finishing was probably riddled with typos he'd been too exhausted to catch. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, his supervisor. Morning briefing moved to 8:30. "You're presenting first." "Perfect. Just perfect." Adrian let his head fall back against the headrest. Through the windshield, he could see the sky starting to brighten, that early morning light that Sarah used to love. She'd always been a morning person, up before dawn with her coffee, sitting on their little balcony watching the world wake up. "I'm trying," he said out loud to no one. "I'm really trying." But trying didn't make the alarm go off. Trying didn't put real food in his daughter's stomach. Trying didn't stop him from being late, from being tired, from being the guy everyone else at the office stepped around carefully because they all knew, everyone knew, that Adrian Cole was barely holding it together. 2 years. It had been 2 years since Sarah died, and he still felt like he was drowning. He started the car. The morning briefing went about as well as he expected. Marcus stood at the head of the conference table with his arms crossed, watching Adrian fumble through his presentation with the kind of expression that suggested he was mentally composing an email to HR. "So what you're saying," Marcus interrupted for the third time, "is that the client engagement metrics are down, but you're recommending we increase resource allocation to that sector?" Adrian looked down at his notes, the notes he'd been too tired to review properly, the notes that now seemed to contradict themselves in 3 different places. "I'm saying that the potential return justifies the potential return." Marcus's voice was flat. "Based on what data?" "Based on the projection models from Q3. Q3 models that didn't account for the market shift in November." Adrian felt the eyes of everyone else in the room on him. Jennifer from finance, looking uncomfortable. Paul from operations, suddenly very interested in his coffee. That new guy whose name Adrian couldn't remember, just watching this train wreck unfold. "I can revise the models," Adrian said, hating how defensive he sounded. "Give me until end of day, I'll have updated numbers. You were supposed to have updated numbers today. That's what this meeting was for." Marcus uncrossed his arms and sighed, and somehow that was worse than the frustration. That sigh said, "I'm not even surprised anymore." "Look, Adrian, we need to talk. My office. After this." The rest of the meeting blurred together. Adrian sat there while Jennifer took over his presentation, fixing his mistakes on the fly, presenting the data the way he should have presented it if he'd had 3 more hours of sleep and a brain that worked right. When it was finally over, he followed Marcus down the hallway to the corner office with the view of downtown that Marcus definitely didn't deserve. Marcus closed the door. "Sit down." Adrian sat. For a long moment, Marcus just looked at him across the desk. Not angry. That was the thing. If Marcus had been angry, Adrian could have handled it, could have apologized, promised to do better, played the game. But Marcus looked tired and sad. "You're a good guy, Adrian," Marcus said finally. "Everyone knows what you've been through, what you're still going through, and we've tried to be understanding." Past tense. Adrian's stomach sank. "But this can't keep happening. The missed deadlines, the mistakes, showing up late. I was on time today." "You were on time today." Marcus leaned forward. "What about last Thursday? Or the week before when you left in the middle of the day and didn't come back? Or the client call you completely forgot about?" Adrian didn't have an answer for that. Couldn't explain that last Thursday Emma's school had called because she'd thrown up, or that the week before she'd had a meltdown in the pickup line and he'd had to take her home and hold her while she cried for her mom. Couldn't explain that he'd forgotten the client call because he'd been up until 2 in the morning helping Emma with a diorama project that was due the next day, that he'd only found out about that evening. "I know it's hard," Marcus continued. "I can't even imagine. But I've got a department to run, and I need people I can rely on." "You can rely on me." "Can I?" The question hung there between them. "I'm trying to do better," Adrian said, and hated how much he sounded like he was begging. "I just need a little more time to figure things out. You've had 2 years. The words landed like a punch. Marcus rubbed his forehead, looking genuinely conflicted. "Look, I'm not firing you, not today, but I'm putting you on a performance improvement plan. 60 days. Either you figure out how to get your head back in the game, or..." He didn't finish the sentence, didn't have to. Adrian nodded slowly. 60 days. "Yeah. And if I can't?" Marcus met his eyes. "Then I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go." Adrian made it to his car before the panic attack hit. It started as a tightness in his chest, like someone was sitting on his rib cage. Then his hands started shaking. Then he couldn't breathe right, couldn't get enough air, and suddenly he was gripping the steering wheel with both hands just to keep them from trembling. 60 days. What was he supposed to do? He couldn't afford to lose this job. The benefits, the salary. It was barely enough as it was, even with Sarah's life insurance money sitting in an account he didn't touch because using it felt like admitting she was really gone. But he also couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep running himself into the ground, couldn't keep failing Emma, couldn't keep being the guy who showed up late and left early and could barely string together a coherent presentation. His phone rang. Emma's school. His heart stopped. "Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Principal Morrison from Riverside Elementary. Everything's fine, she added quickly, hearing his panic. Emma's okay, but we need you to come pick her up. What happened? She's in the nurse's office. She says her stomach hurts, but the nurse thinks it might be anxiety. She's been asking for you. Adrian closed his eyes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Thank you. And Mr. Cole? Principal Morrison's voice softened. Maybe when you get here we could have a quick chat about Emma? Yeah, okay. He hung up and just sat there for a moment, phone in his hand, trying to figure out how this had become his life. Then he started the car and drove to his daughter. Emma was sitting on the vinyl bench in the nurse's office, legs swinging because they didn't reach the floor, holding the stuffed rabbit she kept in her backpack. When Adrian walked in, she looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Hey, baby. He knelt down in front of her. I hear you're not feeling good. She shook her head. Your stomach hurt? A nod. The nurse, Mrs. Patterson, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, gave Adrian a meaningful look. No fever, no other symptoms. But she's clearly upset about something. Adrian reached out and tucked a strand of blonde hair behind Emma's ear. You want to tell me what's wrong? Emma's lower lip trembled. I don't want to go to Sarah's house anymore. Sarah's house. That's what Emma called her aunt's place, where she stayed after school until Adrian could pick her up. Sarah's sister, Rachel, who'd been helping out since the funeral, who Adrian couldn't afford to offend because he literally had no other childcare options. Did something happen there? No. Emma's voice got smaller. I want to be with you. Something in Adrian's chest twisted. I want to be with you too, Em, but I have to work so I can... You're always working. It came out as barely a whisper, but it hit like a freight train. You're always tired, and you're always working, and you never... She stopped, tears spilling over. Adrian pulled her into his arms. She was getting bigger. When had she gotten so big? But she still fit against his chest the way she had when she was tiny, when Sarah was alive and the world made sense. I'm sorry, he said into her hair. I'm so sorry, baby. Principal Morrison appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cole, if you have a few minutes? They sat in her office while Emma waited outside with the secretary. Principal Morrison folded her hands on her desk and looked at Adrian with the kind of professional sympathy that somehow made everything worse. Emma's teacher is concerned, she began. She's withdrawn in class, doesn't participate much. During lunch, she usually sits alone. The other kids have tried to include her, but Morrison paused. She seems to be isolating herself. Adrian felt like he was underwater, listening to this from very far away. Her grades are fine, Morrison continued. She's smart, she does her homework, but socially, emotionally, Mr. Cole, I think Emma is struggling more than she's letting on. And I think, forgive me for saying this, but I think she's worried about you. About me? Children are perceptive. If they sense a parent is overwhelmed, they often try to take care of that parent instead of asking for what they need themselves. Morrison's voice was gentle. Does that sound like Emma? Adrian thought about his daughter standing in her room this morning, fully dressed, holding his car keys. Thought about her eating a granola bar alone because she knew there wasn't time for anything else. Thought about her saying, we don't have time, like a tiny adult instead of a 7-year-old kid. Yeah, he managed. That sounds like her. Have you considered counseling for both of you? I don't have time for... He stopped himself, hearing how that sounded. I'm on a tight schedule with work. It's hard to find time for appointments. Morrison didn't say anything, but her expression said plenty. Adrian drove Emma home in silence. She fell asleep in the back seat, still clutching her rabbit, and he carried her up to their apartment and laid her down on the couch. He looked around the living room. Laundry piled on the chair, dishes in the sink, Emma's backpack dumped by the door where she'd left it yesterday. The spider plant Sarah had loved, now brown and dying because he couldn't even remember to water it. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Need those revised numbers by 5 p.m. Adrian looked at his sleeping daughter, looked at his phone, looked at the mess that had become his life, and something in him just broke. Not dramatically, not with anger or tears or anything that would make a good story, just a quiet, complete understanding that he couldn't keep doing this, that something had to change radically and immediately, or he was going to lose everything that mattered. He pulled out his laptop and opened his email, started typing. Dear Marcus, I'm resigning, effective immediately. His hands paused over the keyboard. Was he really doing this? Quitting his job with no backup plan, no safety net, just jumping? He looked at Emma again, at the dark circles under her eyes that matched his own, at the way she curled up small even in sleep, like she was trying not to take up too much space in the world. I appreciate the opportunities I've had here, but I need to prioritize my family right now. I'll send my final project files by end of day. He read it over once, twice. Then he hit send before he could talk himself out of it. For a long moment, he just sat there, laptop open, feeling like he'd just jumped off a cliff and was waiting to see if he'd sprout wings or hit the ground. His phone rang almost immediately. Marcus. Adrian sent it to voicemail. It rang again. He turned it off. Then he sat down on the floor next to the couch, close enough to touch Emma's hand, and tried to figure out what the hell he was going to do next. The answer came 3 days later from the last place he expected. Adrian had spent those 3 days in a weird fog of terror and relief. Terror because he'd just quit his job with a 7-year-old to support and rent due in 2 weeks. Relief because for the first time in 2 years, he'd woken up without an alarm and made Emma actual pancakes for breakfast and walked her to the bus stop without feeling like he was going to throw up from stress. Rachel, Sarah's sister, had been horrified when he told her. You quit? She'd stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Adrian, what are you thinking? How are you going to pay your bills? I'll figure it out. You'll figure it out? That's your plan? I couldn't keep doing what I was doing, Rachel. It was killing me. It was hurting Emma. So instead you quit your job with no backup? That's going to help Emma how exactly? Her voice had gotten sharp. When you can't pay rent? When you can't buy groceries? Adrian hadn't had a good answer for that. Still didn't. But on the third day, scrolling through job listings with increasing desperation, he found something that made him stop. Hale Industries, seeking department coordinator. We're looking for organized, dedicated individuals who understand that work-life balance isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Competitive salary, flexible hours, comprehensive benefits. Experience preferred but not required. What we really want is someone who shows up, cares, and isn't afraid to learn. Adrian read it 3 times. Flexible hours. Work-life balance. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. Probably some startup that would burn through funding in 6 months and leave him unemployed again. But the salary they listed was 20% more than he'd been making at his old job. He clicked on the company website, Hale Industries, founded 8 years ago by Victoria Hale, who'd apparently built a tech empire before she turned 30. The website showed a sleek glass building downtown, smiling employees in casual clothes, a mission statement about human-centered business practices. Corporate speak. It was all corporate speak. But there was something about it. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was the photo of Victoria Hale herself, young, sharp-eyed, standing in front of a wall of windows with her arms crossed, looking directly at the camera with an expression that somehow managed to be both professional and genuine. Or maybe it was just that he had 12 days until rent was due and his bank account was looking thinner every time he checked it. He updated his resume, wrote a cover letter that was probably too honest about his situation, and hit submit before he could overthink it. The email came back in 4 hours. Mr. Cole, thank you for your application. We'd like to schedule an interview for tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you're available, please respond to confirm. Victoria Hale. Wait. Victoria Hale herself? The CEO? Adrian read the email again, looking for signs it was automated or that he'd misread the signature. But no, it was brief, direct, and signed with her name. He typed back, I'll be there. Thank you. That night he couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through all the ways this could go wrong. He didn't have recent references. Marcus sure as hell wasn't going to give him a glowing review. His resume had a 2-week gap that he'd have to explain. His last performance review had basically been a written warning. And what was he supposed to wear? His good suit was from Sarah's funeral. He couldn't wear that. Couldn't walk in there carrying that weight. At 2 a.m., he got up and tried on every combination of clothes he owned, finally settling on dark slacks and a button-down that only looked slightly wrinkled if you didn't look too close. Emma found him in the kitchen at 6 a.m., already dressed, drinking his 3rd cup of coffee. You look fancy, she said, climbing into her chair. I have a job interview today. Oh. She poured herself cereal. She'd learned to do that herself, he realized with a pang. When had she learned that? Will you get it? I don't know, baby. Maybe. What if you don't? He looked at his daughter, at those two serious eyes that had learned too young that the world wasn't stable, that people left, that nothing was guaranteed. Then I'll find something else, he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. I promise, Em. We're going to be okay. She nodded and ate her cereal, and Adrian wondered if she believed him any more than he believed himself. Hale Industries occupied 15 floors of a glass tower downtown that made Adrian feel underdressed the moment he walked into the lobby. Everything was clean lines and modern art, and people in expensive clothes moving with purpose. He gave his name to the receptionist, a young guy with a friendly smile who didn't even blink at Adrian's slightly wrinkled shirt. Mr. Cole, yes, Miss Hale is expecting you. 14th floor, suite 1420. The elevator had glass walls. Adrian watched the city drop away beneath him and tried not to think about how far he had to fall. Suite 1420 was smaller than he expected. Not a massive corner office, but a regular-sized room with windows. A desk that was actually being used. Papers, a laptop, coffee cup with lipstick on the rim. Real, like someone actually worked here, instead of just performing being a CEO. Victoria Hale stood up when he walked in. She was younger than her photos suggested, probably not even 35, wearing black slacks and a gray silk blouse that probably cost more than Adrian's rent. Dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail, sharp features, sharper eyes. But when she smiled, something in it was genuine. Adrian Cole. She held out her hand. Thanks for coming in on short notice. Her handshake was firm, professional. The handshake of someone who'd spent years in rooms where she had to prove she belonged. Thank you for seeing me, Adrian said, and tried not to sound as nervous as he felt. Please, sit. She gestured to the chair across from her desk and sat back down herself, pulling his resume toward her. So, I read your application, your cover letter especially. Adrian's stomach dropped. The cover letter where he'd been too honest, where he'd basically admitted he'd quit his last job because he couldn't handle it. I appreciate your honesty, Victoria continued, looking up at him. Most people would have tried to hide the gap in employment or spin it somehow. You just laid it out. Didn't seem like there was much point in lying, Adrian said. You were going to ask anyway. Fair enough. She leaned back in her chair, studying him. Tell me about Emma. He blinked. I'm sorry? Your daughter. You mentioned her in your letter. 7 years old, right? Yes, but I can arrange childcare so it won't affect my work schedule. That's not what I'm asking. Victoria's voice was calm. I'm asking about your daughter. Tell me about her. Adrian didn't know what to do with that. Every interview he'd ever had, the subtext was always the same. Prove that your personal life won't interfere with work. Prove you can compartmentalize. Prove you're dedicated to the company above all else. No one had ever just asked about Emma. He stopped, started again. She's smart, really smart. She loves unicorns and reading, and she's learning piano even though we can't really afford lessons, so she teaches herself from YouTube videos. She's braver than I am. After her mom died, His voice caught. Victoria waited. She held it together better than I did, Adrian finished quietly. She's 7 years old, and she's already learned how to take care of herself because I kept dropping the ball. She gets herself ready in the morning, makes her own breakfast sometimes, and she doesn't complain. She just does it. That must be hard to watch. It's killing me. The words came out before he could stop them. Adrian looked down at his hands, mortified. You didn't say things like that in job interviews. You didn't show that kind of weakness. I'm sorry, he said. That was true? Victoria's voice was softer now. Don't apologize for being honest, Adrian. That's what I'm looking for. He looked up at her. She had her arms folded on the desk, leaning forward slightly, and there was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Not pity, not sympathy exactly. Something else. Can I tell you a story? She asked. Adrian nodded, not trusting his voice. When I started this company, I was 23 years old. Had a business degree, a loan I definitely couldn't afford, and absolutely no idea what I was doing. She smiled slightly. Everyone told me I'd fail. Too young, too inexperienced, too idealistic, and they were almost right. The first 2 years, I nearly went under 4 different times. I worked 100-hour weeks, slept in my office, lived on coffee and determination. She paused. And then I collapsed, literally. Passed out at my desk, woke up in the hospital with my assistant crying and telling me I'd been unconscious for 6 hours. The doctor said if I didn't change something, the stress was going to kill me before I turned 30. Adrian stayed quiet, listening. So I had a choice, Victoria continued. Keep going the way I was going and probably die trying to prove everyone wrong. Or admit that the system itself was broken, that the whole work yourself to death mentality wasn't ambition, it was just death. Slow suicide in a nice suit. She met his eyes. I chose to change everything, rebuilt the whole company around a different idea, that people do better work when they're not drowning, that having a life outside work makes you better at your job, not worse, that flexibility isn't weakness, it's survival. And everyone thought you were crazy, Adrian guessed. Everyone thought I was crazy, she confirmed, but 8 years later, we're profitable, growing, and our employee retention rate is the highest in the industry. Know why? Because people don't want to leave? Because people can actually live while they work here. Victoria pulled out a file from her desk drawer. This position you applied for, department coordinator. The hours are 8 to 4, Monday through Friday. No weekends unless you specifically volunteer for a project and get overtime. No taking work home unless absolutely necessary. And if it is necessary, you get comp time the next week. Full benefits, including childcare stipend and mental health coverage. Adrian's throat felt tight. I'm not going to lie to you, Victoria said. It's still work. There will be hard days, stressful projects, times when things don't go smoothly. But you won't be drowning. You'll have time to pick your daughter up from school, time to make her breakfast, time to actually be her father instead of just surviving in the same house. Why? The word came out rougher than he intended. Why would you do this for someone you don't know? I'm a bad risk. My last boss basically fired me. My resume has holes in it. I'm a devoted father who made a hard choice to prioritize what actually matters, Victoria finished. Yeah, I noticed. That's exactly why I'm offering you this job. Adrian just stared at her. I've read 1,000 resumes from people with perfect work histories who'll tell me exactly what I want to hear, she continued. People who'll smile and nod and slowly burn out because they're too afraid to admit they're human. You showed up here and told me the truth. That's worth more than a perfect resume. She slid a paper across the desk. An offer letter. The salary at the top made Adrian's breath catch. Take tonight to think about it, Victoria said. Talk to Emma. Make sure this is what you want. But if it is, I'd like you to start Monday. Adrian picked up the paper with hands that shook slightly. Read it over once, twice, 3 times, waiting for the catch. The fine print that would make this too good to be true. There wasn't one. I don't understand, he said finally. This is more than I was making before. It's what the position pays. You'll earn it. Victoria stood up, extending her hand again. Everyone deserves a chance to get back up, Adrian. Consider this yours. He shook her hand, and for the first time in 2 years, something like hope flickered in his chest. He told Emma that night over pizza, the good kind from the place they used to go to before Sarah died, back when they could afford little luxuries. So I got the job, he said, watching her face. Emma looked up from her slice, eyes wide. Really? Really. And it means... He had to stop, collect himself. It means I'll be able to pick you up from school every day. We can have dinner together. Real dinner, not just... He gestured at the pizza, although we can still have this sometimes. But I'll be home, Em. I'll actually be home. She put her pizza down carefully, wiped her hands on her napkin. Then she got up from her chair, walked around the table, and climbed into his lap even though she was getting too big for that. Adrian wrapped his arms around her and felt her bury her face in his shirt. I missed you, she whispered. I know, baby. I missed you too. Even when you were here, I missed you. That broke him. He held her tighter and let himself cry for the first time since the funeral. And Emma held on just as tight. And maybe this was the first step. Maybe this was where they started actually healing instead of just surviving. When she finally pulled back, Her eyes were red, but she was smiling. Can we have pancakes tomorrow? She asked. We can have pancakes every day if you want. That would be too many pancakes, Dad. He laughed, surprised by the sound. Yeah, probably. But tomorrow, definitely. Okay. She climbed down and went back to her pizza, and just like that, she was 7 again. Resilient, ready to try hoping one more time. Adrian looked at the offer letter still sitting on the table and thought about Victoria Hale. This woman he didn't know, who'd looked at his messy, broken life and offered him a way back to shore. He had no idea what he'd done to deserve this chance, but he wasn't going to waste it. Monday morning felt different. Adrian woke up at 6, actually woke up, not dragged himself out of sleep in a panic, and lay there for a moment just breathing. Sunlight was creeping through the curtains. He could hear birds outside, which was weird because he'd lived in this apartment for 3 years and couldn't remember ever noticing birds before. He got up, showered, put on the clothes he'd laid out the night before. Business casual, Victoria had said. No need for a suit every day. Just look professional and comfortable. Comfortable. What a concept. Emma was already awake when he went to her room, sitting up in bed with her hair sticking up in about 17 different directions. First day, she said. First day, he agreed. You nervous? She shook her head. You? Terrified. That made her giggle, and the sound of it loosened something in his chest. When was the last time he'd made her laugh before 7 in the morning? They had pancakes. Real ones, not freezer ones. Emma wanted to put chocolate chips in hers, and Adrian said yes, because why the hell not? They were celebrating. She ate 3 and got syrup on her unicorn shirt and had to change, but they still made it to the bus stop with 10 minutes to spare. 10 minutes. They stood there together in the morning sun, Emma's hand in his, and Adrian felt like he'd won something. Something small but crucial. You're going to do good today, Emma said, looking up at him with those serious eyes. You think so? Yeah, you're smart, Dad. His throat went tight. Thanks, baby. The bus pulled up. Emma hugged him quick before climbing on, and this time when she pressed her hand to the window, Adrian could see she was smiling. He drove to Hale Industries with his heart hammering but his hands steady on the wheel. The office was different when you were actually supposed to be there. The lobby receptionist, Jason, his name tag said, greeted Adrian like he'd been expecting him. First day, awesome. Ms. Hale wanted me to send you straight up. She's going to do your orientation herself. Herself? Yeah, she does that sometimes. Says she likes to meet people before they get lost in the system. Jason grinned. Don't worry, she's not as scary as she looks. Adrian took the elevator to 14, trying to ignore the way his stomach was doing acrobatics. A CEO doing orientation for a department coordinator? That didn't track. He must be some kind of special case, which either meant she was incredibly hands-on or he was already being watched more closely than normal employees. Neither option was particularly comforting. Victoria's door was open when he got there. She was on the phone, gesturing with one hand while typing with the other, and when she saw him, she held up one finger in a just-a-minute gesture that was somehow both apologetic and commanding. I understand that, she was saying into the phone, but our contract specifies delivery by end of quarter, not end of year. So either you meet the deadline or we discuss breach of contract. Those are the options. A pause. Great. I'll expect the updated timeline by Wednesday. Thanks, Michael. She hung up and looked at Adrian. Morning. Coffee? I'm okay, thanks. You sure? It's going to be a long day. She was already pouring herself a cup from the machine on the credenza behind her desk. How do you take it, just in case you change your mind? Black is fine. She poured a second cup anyway and slid it across the desk toward him. Have a seat. How's Emma? The question caught him off guard again. She's good. Ate 3 chocolate chip pancakes this morning. 3? That's impressive. Victoria pulled out a tablet and stylized, all business now. Okay, so here's how today's going to work. I'm going to walk you through the basics of what we do here, introduce you to your team, and get you set up with IT. Then we'll grab lunch, and I'll answer whatever questions you have. Sound good? Sounds good, but Adrian hesitated. Don't you have, CEO things to do? This is CEO things. Making sure my people are set up for success is literally the job. She stood up. Come on. I'll show you around. The tour took 2 hours. Victoria walked him through 3 different departments, introduced him to what felt like 50 people whose names Adrian tried desperately to remember, and explained the company structure in a way that actually made sense instead of sounding like corporate nonsense. We've got 5 main divisions, she said as they walked down a hallway lined with glass-walled conference rooms. Product development, client services, operations, marketing, and research. You'll be coordinating between operations and client services, which basically means you're the translator. Ops speaks in logistics and timelines, clients speak in needs and expectations, and you make sure they understand each other. So I'm a mediator. You're a mediator who also tracks projects, manages schedules, and occasionally puts out fires. But yeah, basically. She stopped at a corner office, smaller than hers but still nice, with windows and everything. This is yours. Adrian stared. This is mine? You're going to be meeting with department heads and clients. You need a professional space. She pushed the door open. There's a standing desk option if you want it. The monitor connects to any laptop, and IT will have you set up by this afternoon. Questions so far? About 1,000, but Adrian's brain had stalled on the fact that he had an actual office, with a door and windows. Why are you doing this? He asked instead. Victoria looked at him, head tilted slightly. Doing what? All of this. The personal tour, the office, He gestured vaguely. You hired me 3 days ago, and you're treating me like I'm actually important. You are actually important. Everyone here is. She leaned against the doorframe. Look, I know this probably feels weird. Most companies treat new hires like they're disposable until they prove otherwise. But I found that when you invest in people from day one, they invest back. It's not charity, Adrian. It's strategy. Still doesn't explain why you're the one doing my orientation. Because I want to. She said it simply, like that was all the explanation needed. I like knowing the people who work here. Sue me. She pushed off the doorframe and started walking again. Adrian followed, still trying to wrap his head around this place. They grabbed lunch at a cafe 2 blocks over. Victoria ordered a salad that she actually ate instead of picking at, and Adrian got a sandwich he was too nervous to taste. Tell me about your last job, Victoria said between bites. What went wrong? Besides everything? Start with something specific. Adrian thought about it. They didn't care. I mean, they said they cared. All the emails about work-life balance and mental health resources. But when it came down to it, if you weren't producing, you were out. Didn't matter why. And you weren't producing. I was trying, but I'd stay up until midnight finishing a project, sleep through my alarm, miss breakfast with Emma, show up late, get yelled at, stay late to make up for it, and the whole cycle would just... He made a spiral gesture with his hand. I couldn't win. Victoria nodded slowly. What would winning have looked like? Being able to do my job and be Emma's dad, both, at the same time, without feeling like I was failing at everything. That's not unreasonable. My old boss thought it was. Your old boss was wrong. Victoria set down her fork. Can I tell you what I expect from you here? Adrian braced himself. I expect you to show up and do good work, she said. I expect you to communicate when you're struggling instead of pretending you're fine. I expect you to leave at 4 so you can pick up your daughter. And I expect you to not check email after hours unless something is literally on fire. That's it? That's it. You think you can handle that? I think so. Then we're good. She went back to her salad. How's Emma handling everything? The transition? There it was again. Most people asked about work, about his qualifications, about whether he could handle the job. Victoria kept coming back to Emma. She's cautiously optimistic, Adrian said. She's been let down enough that she doesn't quite believe things can be stable yet, but she's trying. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. She sees through all my bullshit. Victoria smiled at that, a real smile that reached her eyes. The good ones always do. My nephew is like that. He's 9 and he calls me out constantly. Last month I told him I was too busy to come to his soccer game, and he just looked at me and said, "You're always too busy, Aunt Vic. That's a choice. Put me right in my place." Did you go to the game? I went to every game after that. She paused. Kids have a way of showing you what matters, if you're willing to listen. They finished lunch and walked back to the office. Victoria had a meeting at 2, so she handed Adrian off to Janet from HR. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude who walked him through benefits and paperwork and showed him how to access the employee portal. "Ms. Hale speaks very highly of you," Janet said as Adrian signed the last form. "She doesn't even know me." "She knows enough. She's got good instincts about people." Janet collected the papers and slid them into a folder. "Word of advice, don't overthink this. You got hired because she saw something in you. Just do the work and let yourself be human. That's all anyone here expects." By 4 o'clock, Adrian's head was spinning with information, and his inbox had 37 emails he had no idea how to process. But when the clock hit 4 o'clock, he logged off, grabbed his bag, and left. Just left. No guilt, no apologizing, no checking to see if anyone noticed. He walked out of the building and got in his car and drove to Emma's school, and when she came running out and saw him waiting, her whole face lit up. "You came! I told you I would!" She threw her arms around him right there in the pickup line, and Adrian didn't even care that there were other parents watching. They got ice cream on the way home because Emma asked, and Adrian couldn't think of a single reason to say no. They ate it while walking through the park, Emma chattering about her day, about her friend Sophie who had a new puppy, about the art project they were starting tomorrow. Adrian listened and realized he hadn't actually heard about Emma's day in months. He'd asked, sure, but he hadn't really listened. Too tired, too stressed, too focused on just getting through the next thing. "Dad?" Emma was looking up at him, chocolate ice cream on her chin. "Yeah, baby? Are you happy?" The question stopped him. "Am I happy?" "You look different, not so tired." "I feel different." He wiped the ice cream off her chin with his thumb. "I think I might actually be happy. Is that okay?" Emma thought about it seriously. "Yeah, that's okay. Mom would want you to be happy." Something in Adrian's chest cracked open. "You think so?" "I know so. She told me once that all she wanted was for us to be happy, before she—" Emma trailed off, looking down at her ice cream. Adrian knelt down so he was at her level. "Before she got sick?" A nod. "What else did she tell you?" "That you were the best dad in the world, that I should take care of you when she was gone." Emma's voice got smaller. "But I don't think I did a very good job." No, baby, you did perfect. You did more than any kid should have to do. But you were sad all the time. That wasn't your fault. That was never your fault." Adrian pulled her into a hug, ice cream and all. "You know what Mom would tell us right now?" "What?" "That we're allowed to be sad about losing her, but we're also allowed to be happy again. Both things can be true." Emma pulled back, studying his face. "You think we can do that?" "I think we're already doing it." They finished their ice cream and walked home as the sun started to set, and for the first time in 2 years, Adrian felt like they might actually be okay. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost too good to be real. Adrian got up at 6, made breakfast, walked Emma to the bus stop, worked from 8 to 4, learning the systems, meeting with department heads, slowly figuring out how to translate between teams that spoke completely different languages. Then he'd pick Emma up, help with homework, make dinner that wasn't takeout or frozen. It was normal. Devastatingly, beautifully normal. But the thing he hadn't expected was Victoria. She checked in on him every few days, sometimes just poking her head into his office to ask how things were going, sometimes pulling him into her office for what she called calibration meetings that were really just conversations about whether he was settling in okay. "How's the workload?" she asked one Friday afternoon, 3 weeks in. "Manageable. I'm still figuring out some of the project management software, but I'm getting there." "And you're leaving at 4? Every day?" "Good." She made a note on her tablet. "What about Emma? How's she adjusting to the new schedule?" "She's great. Her teacher actually pulled me aside yesterday to say she's been more engaged in class lately." Adrian couldn't help smiling. "Apparently she's been participating more, playing with the other kids at recess. She even joined the after-school art club." Victoria's expression softened. "That's wonderful." "Yeah, it really is. You're doing good work here, Adrian. I want you to know that." "Thanks. I'm trying. I can tell." She stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something. We're doing a company retreat next month. Team building, planning sessions, that kind of thing. It's optional, but I think it would be good for you to come. Get to know people outside the office environment. Where is it? Lake House, about 2 hours north. We'd leave Friday afternoon, come back Sunday evening. Full catering, all expenses paid, and we arrange childcare if people need it. Adrian hesitated. I don't know. That's a whole weekend away from Emma. Rachel could watch her, right? Your sister-in-law? Technically, yeah, but you don't want to. Victoria's voice was gentle. I get it. It's a lot. Just think about it, okay? No pressure. But there was pressure, even if she didn't mean it that way. The unspoken expectation that team players showed up to these things, that people who wanted to advance said yes. Adrian pushed the thought away. I'll think about it. That night, he mentioned it to Emma over dinner. A whole weekend? She looked down at her spaghetti. Oh. I probably won't go. It's optional. You should go if you want to. I want to be here with you. Emma twirled her fork in her pasta, not eating. Rachel's not mean or anything. She's actually pretty nice. But she's not you. Emma looked up. When you're gone, it feels like when Mom was in the hospital. Like maybe you won't come back. Adrian's heart broke a little. Em, I'm always going to come back, always. I know. In my brain, I know. But my stomach doesn't know. He'd never heard it put that way before. Your stomach doesn't know. The part of you that feels things before you can think them through. Then I won't go, he said. Easy decision. But what if Ms. Hale gets mad? She won't. She's the one who told me family comes first, remember? Emma nodded, but she still looked worried, like she was waiting for the other shoe to drop, for this good thing to turn bad like everything else had. Adrian made a mental note to email Victoria that night and declined politely. But before he could, his phone rang. Victoria's name on the screen. Hey, he answered. I was actually about to email you. Emma can come. What? To the retreat. I just realized we do this thing where kids are invited too. There's a whole program for them. Nature hikes, arts and crafts, s'mores by the fire. Emma would love it. Victoria sounded almost excited. I can't believe I didn't mention it earlier. Some of our employees bring their kids every year. Adrian looked at Emma, who was watching him with wide eyes. Hold on a second, he told Victoria, then covered the phone. How would you feel about coming with me? There would be other kids, activities, the whole thing. Emma's face transformed. Really? I could come? If you want to. Yes. Can I please? Adrian got back on the phone. We're in. Perfect. I'll send you the details. Victoria paused. Adrian? I'm glad you're coming. Both of you. Something in her voice made him wonder if she'd planned this all along. The retreat was in 3 weeks, which gave Emma exactly enough time to get excited about it, to the point of asking Adrian every single day what she should pack and whether there would be horses and if she could bring her art supplies. There might be horses, Adrian said for the 10th time. I don't know. We'll find out when we get there. But if there are horses, I should bring my riding boots. You don't have riding boots. We should get riding boots. We're not getting riding boots for a maybe. Emma pouted but dropped it, moving on to whether she needed a sleeping bag or if they'd have beds, and Adrian answered patiently even though he had no idea because he'd barely skimmed the email Victoria sent. Work continued to be good. Surprisingly good. Adrian found his rhythm in the role, learned which department heads needed detailed explanations and which ones just wanted the bullet points, figured out how to manage timelines without staying late. And Victoria was there, not hovering, but present. She'd stop by his office with coffee sometimes, asking how projects were going, whether he needed anything. She showed up to team meetings and actually listened when people talked instead of just waiting for her turn to speak. The Friday before the retreat, she called him into her office. Quick question, she said when he sat down. Emma's allergic to anything? Dietary restrictions? No, she eats everything. Why? Just making sure. We've got a menu planned, and I want to make sure all the kids are covered. Victoria made a note. What about you? Any preferences? I'm not picky. Everyone's picky about something. Okay, fine, I hate mushrooms. She smiled. Noted. No mushrooms for Adrian Cole. You're really paying attention to this stuff, aren't you? It's my retreat. Of course I'm paying attention. She set down her pen and looked at him. I want people to actually enjoy themselves, not just show up and count the hours until they can leave. That includes making sure a 7-year-old has fun and her dad doesn't have to eat mushrooms. Adrian didn't know what to say to that. You're good at this, he said finally. The whole CEO thing, running a company that doesn't treat people like robots. I'm trying. Some days are better than others. She leaned back in her chair. Can I tell you something? Sure. Most people in my position, they'd tell you to choose career or family, success or balance, ambition or happiness, like you can't have both. Her voice got quieter. And I used to think they were right. That's how I built this company, by sacrificing everything else. But then I almost died doing it, and I realized that's not success. That's just slow suicide in expensive clothes. So you changed everything. I changed everything. And people told me I'd fail. That being humane would make me weak, that caring about employees would tank profits, that flexibility was just another word for lazy. She met his eyes. They were wrong. We're more successful now than we ever were when I was working myself to death. Because it turns out people do better work when they're actually alive. Adrian sat with that for a moment. Why are you telling me this? Because I see you trying to prove yourself, showing up early, staying late. I leave at 4 every day. You leave at 4:15 most days, and I know you're answering emails at night sometimes because I can see the time stamps. Her voice was gentle but firm. I'm not mad. I just want you to understand that you don't have to earn your place here. You already have it. It's hard to believe that. I know. Your last job trained you to think you're disposable, but you're not. Not here. She stood up. Go home, Adrian, pack for the retreat. Spend the evening with Emma. I'll see you both Friday. He left her office feeling like he'd just been given permission for something he didn't know he needed. That evening, he and Emma packed together. She was vibrating with excitement, pulling out every piece of clothing she owned and asking his opinion on each one. This shirt or this shirt? The purple one. What about for Saturday? The other purple one. Dad, I can't wear purple both days. Why not? You love purple. She gave him a look that suggested he'd clearly lost his mind, then went back to creating what appeared to be a pile of every single item from her dresser. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Forgot to mention, there's a bonfire Saturday night. Bring warm clothes. He typed back, will do. Thanks. A moment later. Emma's going to love it. There's this thing we do with sparklers and stories. It's kind of magical. Adrian stared at the word magical on his screen. When was the last time someone had used that word about anything in his life? Emma appeared in front of him holding 2 identical pairs of jeans. Which ones? They're the same, Em. This one has the star on the pocket. Then wear that one. But what if I want to wear the stars on Sunday? Adrian pulled her into his lap, jeans and all. Hey, we're going to have fun, okay? Whatever you wear, whatever we do, we're going to have a good time together. That's what matters. Emma leaned back against him. Is Ms. Hale nice? Like, outside of work? I think so. Why? Because you talk about her a lot. I do? Yeah. Ms. Hale said this, and Ms. Hale thinks that, and Ms. Hale wanted to make sure you're having fun at the retreat. Emma twisted around to look at him. Do you like her? She's my boss, Em. That's not what I asked. Adrian didn't have a good answer for that. Did he like Victoria? As a person, not just as the CEO who'd given him a second chance? Yeah, he did. She was smart and funny and weirdly thoughtful about small things. She remembered details, cared about people in a way that seemed genuine rather than performative, but that was just appreciation, professional respect. She's nice, he told Emma, and I think you'll like her too. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to her packing crisis, leaving Adrian alone with the uncomfortable realization that maybe he did think about Victoria more than strictly necessary. But that didn't mean anything. She was just being a good boss. He was just being grateful. Friday arrived with Emma bouncing off the walls from the moment she woke up. Adrian loaded their bags into the car, double-checked that he had everything on the packing list Victoria had sent, and tried not to feel nervous about spending a whole weekend in close quarters with his coworkers. The drive north was beautiful. Late spring, everything green and alive,
Emma pointing out cows and horses and asking if they could stop at every single barn they passed.
We're almost there, Adrian said for the 5th time. Just another 20 minutes. You said that 20 minutes ago. And now we're 20 minutes closer. Emma groaned dramatically and went back to her book, and Adrian smiled despite his nerves. The lake house was more estate than house. A massive lodge-style building with huge windows overlooking the water, surrounded by smaller cabins tucked into the trees. People were already arriving, unloading bags, kids running around the lawn. Adrian parked and was immediately approached by a woman with a clipboard and an enthusiastic smile. Adrian Cole, and this must be Emma. Hi, sweetie. I'm Michelle. I'm coordinating the kids' program this weekend. We're going to have so much fun. She was talking at a speed that suggested large amounts of coffee. Emma, if you want to head over to the main lawn, we're doing introductions and games in about 10 minutes. Your dad can get you settled in your cabin first if you want, or you can just bring your stuff later, totally up to you. Emma looked at Adrian. Can I go? Sure, baby. I'll bring your bag to the cabin. She took off running before he could finish the sentence. Adrian grabbed both their bags and headed toward the check-in table, where a familiar figure stood talking to a group of employees. Victoria, wearing jeans and a soft gray sweater instead of her usual business clothes. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders, and she was laughing at something someone said. She looked different, younger, more relaxed. She turned and saw him, and her smile widened. Adrian, you made it. Where's Emma? Already kidnapped by your very enthusiastic coordinator. Michelle's great. Overwhelming, but great. Victoria grabbed a folder from the table. You're in cabin 7. It's got 2 beds, full bathroom, and the best view of the lake. Emma's going to love it. You picked our cabin. I picked everyone's cabin. Comes with the job. She handed him a map. Dinner's at 6 in the main lodge, and there's a welcome reception at 5 if you want to mingle. But no pressure. Settle in, explore, do whatever feels good. Someone called her name from across the lawn. She waved at them, then looked back at Adrian. I'm glad you're here, she said, and something in her expression made his heart do a weird skip. Thanks for inviting us. She smiled once more, then headed toward whoever was calling her, leaving Adrian standing there with his bags and a feeling he couldn't quite name. He found cabin 7 tucked between 2 large pines, exactly as beautiful as Victoria had promised. Emma was going to lose her mind when she saw it. He unpacked quickly, checked his phone out of habit, then forced himself to put it away. No work emails, no emergency calls from Emma's school, just a weekend to breathe. The welcome reception was casual, people standing around with drinks, kids running between the adults, the smell of a grill starting up somewhere nearby. Adrian grabbed a water and tried to look approachable while simultaneously hoping no one would actually approach him. You look terrified. He turned to find Victoria next to him, holding a glass of wine. That obvious? Only a little. She took a sip. Not a big fan of forced socializing? Not really my thing. Mine either, honestly. But it's good for morale or team building or whatever the books say. She gestured toward the lawn where Emma was already in deep conversation with 3 other kids. She seems to be doing okay. Emma makes friends easier than I do. Most people do. Victoria smiled. Want me to introduce you around? Make it less awkward? You don't have to babysit me. I'm not babysitting. I'm being a good host. She was already walking, and Adrian found himself following. She introduced him to what felt like the entire company over the next hour, remembering everyone's names and something specific about them, making connections, putting people at ease. And somehow, by staying next to her, Adrian felt less like the new guy and more like someone who belonged. Dinner was a buffet-style setup in the main lodge, everyone sitting wherever they wanted at long communal tables. Emma ended up at the kids' table, completely absorbed in whatever story one of the other children was telling. Adrian found himself at a table with Victoria and a few department heads, listening to them discuss everything from quarterly projections to the best hiking trails in the area. You hike? Victoria asked him during a lull in conversation. Not in years, used to before. He trailed off. Before Sarah, she finished quietly. He looked at her, surprised she remembered. You mentioned her during your interview, Victoria said. Emma's mom. Yeah. Adrian pushed food around his plate. We used to do this thing every spring. Pack up, drive somewhere we'd never been, just explore for a weekend. Emma was too little to remember most of it. You should start again. Maybe. There's a trail here that's perfect for kids. Not too hard. Great views. I'm taking a group tomorrow morning if you want to join. I don't want to slow you down. You won't. It's not a race. Victoria stood up to refill her water, paused. Think about it. After dinner, there was a movie for the kids in one of the common rooms. Emma begged to stay, and Adrian said yes, then found himself wandering down to the lake alone. The water was still, reflecting the last light of sunset. Adrian sat on the dock, legs dangling, trying to remember the last time he'd felt this quiet in his own head. Mind if I join you? Victoria, appearing like she had a sixth sense for when he needed company but wouldn't ask for it. It's your dock, Adrian said. Technically, it's the company's dock. She sat down next to him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. But I'll take that as a yes. They sat in silence for a while, watching the water turn from orange to deep blue as night settled in. Thank you, Adrian said finally, for all of this. The job, the retreat, everything. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. Why? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Because someone did it for me once. When I was 23 and drowning and had no idea how to ask for help, someone saw me struggling and threw me a rope instead of telling me to swim harder. She looked at him. I promised myself if I ever got the chance, I'd do the same for someone else. Who was it? Who helped you? My business professor in college. She saw my business plan, saw how hard I was working, and instead of telling me all the ways it would fail, she introduced me to investors, vouched for me when I had no credibility, checked in on me even after I graduated. Victoria's voice got soft. She died 5 years ago. Heart attack. She was only 52. I'm sorry. Me too. But I think about her every time I hire someone, every time I make a decision about how to run this place. She taught me that success isn't just about being smart or driven. It's about being decent to people along the way. Adrian didn't know what to say to that, so he just sat with her in the gathering dark, grateful for this moment, for this person who seemed to see him as something other than broken. Your Emma's lucky to have you, Victoria said eventually. I'm not sure about that. I am. You gave up everything to be there for her. That's not nothing. I didn't have a choice. You absolutely had a choice. You could have kept the job, kept pushing through, kept telling yourself it was for her sake, but you didn't. You chose her over your career. That takes courage. It felt more like failure. It was brave, Victoria said firmly, and I know that because I've seen the other version. The people who choose the job every time and wonder why their kids don't talk to them anymore. You didn't do that. In the distance, Adrian could hear kids laughing, someone playing a guitar, the sounds of life happening around them. I should get back, he said. Check on Emma. Right. Yeah. Victoria stood up, offered him a hand. He took it, felt the warmth of her palm against his, and tried to ignore the fact that she held on for just a second longer than necessary. They walked back to the lodge together in comfortable silence, and when they got there, Emma came running up with paint on her hands and a huge smile on her face. Dad, look what I made! She held up a canvas covered in swirls of blue and purple. It's the lake! It's beautiful, baby. Miss Hale, do you like it? Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, studying the painting seriously. I think it's wonderful. You really captured the colors. Emma beamed. Come on, Em, Adrian said. Time to get cleaned up and head to bed. But it's not even late. It's past 9. That's not late, Victoria laughed. Listen to your dad, Emma. Big day tomorrow. Are you coming on the hike? Emma asked her. I am. Then we should all go together. Emma looked between them expectantly. Adrian met Victoria's eyes over his daughter's head, saw something flicker there that he couldn't quite read. Sure, Victoria said. We can all go together. And just like that, tomorrow had a plan. Emma was asleep within minutes of her head hitting the pillow, paint still somehow smudged on her elbow despite the bath. Adrian sat on the edge of his own bed, listening to her breathe in the quiet dark of the cabin, and tried to figure out what was happening to him. He kept thinking about Victoria's hand in his, the way she'd looked at Emma's painting like it actually mattered, the fact that she'd remembered Sarah's name from one conversation months ago. It didn't mean anything. She was just being kind. That's what good bosses did.
They remembered details, made people feel valued. It was professional. Except it didn't feel professional when she sat next to him on the dock, when she'd held his hand a second too long, when she'd looked at him across Emma's head with something in her eyes that made his chest tight. Adrian scrubbed his hands over his face. He was being ridiculous, reading into things that weren't there because he was lonely, and she was the first person in 2 years who'd treated him like he was worth something. He needed to get his head straight before the hike tomorrow. Morning came too early, announced by Emma jumping on his bed at what his phone informed him was 6:45. Dad! Dad, wake up! We're going hiking! It's not even 7. The hike starts at 8. We need to eat breakfast and get ready, and I need to find my good socks. Adrian groaned but got up, because arguing with an excited 7-year-old was a losing battle. They made it to the lodge by 7:30, where breakfast was already laid out. Pastries and fruit and coffee that Adrian needed more than oxygen. Victoria was there, talking to Michelle about something, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, and wearing hiking boots that looked actually used, not just expensive. When she saw them, she waved them over. Morning. Emma, you ready for an adventure? I'm so ready. Are there going to be animals? Probably deer, maybe some birds, definitely squirrels. What about bears? No bears on this trail, Victoria said solemnly. I checked. Emma seemed satisfied with that and ran off to load her plate with enough pastries to feed 3 children. She's got energy, Victoria observed. That's one word for it. Adrian poured coffee, noticed Victoria watching him. What? Nothing. You just look tired. Couldn't sleep. Unfamiliar bed? Something like that. He wasn't about to admit he'd spent half the night thinking about her. That would be mortifying on multiple levels. The hiking group ended up being about 15 people, mix of adults and kids, everyone in varying degrees of outdoorsy preparedness. Victoria took the lead, setting a pace that was brisk but manageable, pointing out landmarks and plants like she'd done this trail 100 times. Emma stayed close to Adrian at first, then gradually drifted forward to walk with the other kids, leaving him in the middle of the pack next to David from accounting, who wanted to talk about quarterly reports. I'm actually off the clock this weekend, Adrian said as politely as he could manage. Right, sorry, I just get excited about pivot tables. That's really something. Ahead, Victoria glanced back at him, and even from a distance, Adrian could see she was trying not to laugh. She must have heard that. Great. 20 minutes in, the trail started to climb. Nothing crazy, but enough that conversation died down as people focused on breathing. Emma was still up front with Victoria, chattering away about something Adrian couldn't hear. He pushed himself to catch up, weaving past a couple of slower hikers until he was close enough to hear his daughter's voice. And then the unicorn saved the princess. But the princess didn't need saving because she was actually a ninja. That's a good plot twist, Victoria was saying. I didn't see that coming. Most people don't. That's what makes it good. You're absolutely right. What happens next? Adrian's chest did something complicated. Victoria was actually listening, actually engaged, not just humoring a kid. The way Sarah used to listen to Emma's stories, like they were the most important thing in the world. He must have made a noise because Victoria looked back and smiled at him, and Adrian felt it like a physical thing, that smile, warm and real and directed specifically at him. You good back there? She called. Yeah, just enjoying the view. He meant the lake visible through the trees, but Victoria's cheeks colored slightly and she turned back around faster than necessary. The trail leveled out at a clearing with a view that made even the kids stop talking. The lake spread out below them, surrounded by mountains that still had snow on the peaks, everything green and alive and impossibly beautiful. Okay, Victoria announced. Water break. 15 minutes, then we keep going. People scattered to find rocks to sit on, pulling out water bottles and snacks. Emma found a flat boulder and started arranging pine cones in some pattern only she understood. Adrian stood at the edge of the clearing, just looking, when Victoria appeared beside him again. Worth the climb? She asked. Yeah, definitely. They stood there in silence for a moment, close enough that their shoulders brushed when Victoria shifted her weight. Can I ask you something? She said. Sure. Why did you really come this weekend? Adrian glanced at her. You invited me. I invite everyone, not everyone comes, especially not people with kids who'd probably rather spend the weekend at home. Emma wanted to come. That's not what I asked. He thought about deflecting, giving her some easy answer, but she'd been nothing but honest with him, and he owed her the same. I wanted to see you outside of work, he admitted. See if you were real. Victoria's eyebrows went up. Real? If the whole caring boss thing was just an act, if you'd be different away from the office. He looked back in the view, easier than meeting her eyes. Turns out you're exactly the same, which is either really impressive or really exhausting. I'm going with exhausting, she said, but she was smiling. For what it's worth, you're real too. I'm not sure what that means. It means you're a good dad who's trying his best and doesn't pretend to have everything figured out. That's rare. Most people spend so much energy trying to look perfect that they forget to be actual human beings. I'm definitely not perfect. I know. That's why I like you. The words hung there between them, and Adrian's brain kind of short-circuited trying to figure out if she meant like, as in appreciate as an employee, or like as in something else entirely. Before he could figure out how to respond, Emma came running over. Dad, Ms. Hale, come see what I found. She dragged them over to her boulder where she'd arranged the pine cones into what was apparently supposed to be a face. It's Mr. Pinecone, Emma announced. He lives in the forest and eats… What do pine cones eat? Smaller pine cones, Victoria said seriously. Emma giggled. That's silly. You're the one who made him. Fair point. They finished the hike around noon, everyone sweaty and tired and in good spirits. Lunch was sandwiches on the lawn, kids running around with renewed energy despite having just walked 5 miles. Adrian found himself at a picnic table with Victoria and a few other employees, listening to someone tell a story about a disastrous client meeting that had somehow ended with everyone in a karaoke bar. I still can't believe you sang Bohemian Rhapsody, David was saying to Victoria. I was drunk, and the client requested it. You did all the voices. I committed to the bit. Victoria looked at Adrian. This was before your time. We don't do client karaoke anymore. Probably for the best, Adrian said. Probably, though I was excellent. She was actually terrible, David Stage whispered, but very enthusiastic. Victoria threw a napkin at him. The afternoon had optional activities, kayaking, volleyball, more hiking for the ambitious. Emma wanted to try kayaking, which meant Adrian ended up in a life jacket trying to remember the last time he'd been in any kind of boat. Victoria appeared in her own kayak, somehow managing to make even the bulky life jacket look elegant. Need help, she called over. I think I've got it, Adrian said, then immediately started spinning in a circle. You definitely don't got it. She paddled over and grabbed his kayak, stabilizing it. Okay, watch. Long strokes, alternate sides, use your core more than your arms. My core is mostly coffee and stress. Then use your arms and accept that you'll be sore tomorrow. Emma, meanwhile, had figured it out immediately and was already halfway across the small bay they were in, racing another kid. She's fearless, Victoria observed. Gets it from her mom. Sarah was like that. Tried everything. Wasn't afraid of looking stupid. What was she like, if you don't mind me asking? Adrian thought about it while he tried to make his kayak go in a straight line. She was loud, laughed at her own jokes, cried at commercials, made friends with strangers in grocery stores. She was everything I'm not. Opposites attract? Something like that. I was too serious. She was too spontaneous. Somehow it worked. He managed 3 whole strokes without spinning. She would have liked you. Yeah? Yeah. She had a thing about people who actually gave a damn. Would have appreciated what you're doing with the company. Victoria was quiet for a moment, trailing her paddle in the water. I wish I could have met her. Me too. They paddled in silence for a while, Adrian gradually getting the hang of it, Victoria staying close enough to help, but not so close it felt like babysitting. The sun was warm and the water was calm, and for a few minutes, Adrian let himself just be here in this moment, not thinking about the past or worrying about the future. Emma came racing back, her kayak wobbling dangerously. Dad, Ms. Hale, watch this! She tried to do something that might have been a spin, capsized immediately, and came up sputtering and laughing. Adrian's heart stopped, but Victoria was already moving, reaching Emma in seconds, hauling her back to her kayak with practiced efficiency. You okay? Victoria asked. That was awesome. Can I do it again? Maybe with a little more practice first, Adrian called over, his heart rate finally dropping back to normal. They spent another hour on the water before heading back in, Emma chattering the entire time about how she was definitely going to be a professional kayaker when she grew up, or maybe a marine biologist, or possibly both. Dinner that night was a cookout, burgers and hot dogs and corn on the cob, eating outside as the sun started to set. The kids were getting tired but fighting it, that specific kind of exhausted energy that made them simultaneously wired and cranky. Adrian helped Emma navigate the buffet line, making sure she got vegetables even though she argued she needed 3 burgers. You don't need 3 burgers, but I'm so hungry. You can have 1 burger and 1 hot dog. That's basically 2 burgers. It's really not. Victoria appeared behind them with her own plate. Compromise 1 burger, and I saved you a piece of watermelon from the good part. Emma's eyes lit up. The middle part with no seeds? The very same. Deal! Adrian looked at Victoria. You saved her watermelon? I'm an excellent negotiator. She moved past them to find a seat, and Adrian tried to ignore how aware he was of her presence, the subtle scent of her sunscreen, the way she'd remembered Emma's favorite part of the watermelon. After dinner, someone announced that the bonfire would start in an hour. Kids scattered to their cabins to change into warmer clothes. Adults lingered over drinks and conversation. Adrian was heading back to cabin 7 when he heard his name. Victoria, walking fast to catch up with him. Hey, you got a minute? Sure. What's up? She glanced around like she was checking if anyone was listening, then gestured toward a path that led toward the water. Walk with me? They ended up at the dock again, the same spot they'd sat the night before. The water was darker now, the sky that deep blue of almost night, first stars starting to appear. Victoria sat down and Adrian joined her, their legs hanging over the edge, not quite touching, but close. I wanted to talk to you about something, Victoria said, and I didn't want to do it in front of everyone. Adrian's stomach dropped. This was it. He'd been too familiar, crossed some line, and she was going to gently tell him to back off. Okay, he managed. I've been thinking about what you said earlier about coming this weekend to see if I was real. She was looking out at the water, not at him. And I realized I did the same thing, invited you here to see, I don't know, to see you outside of work, to see if what I thought I was seeing was actually there, or if I was just... She trailed off. Adrian's heart was hammering. If you were just what? Making things up because I wanted them to be there. She finally looked at him. Adrian, I'm trying to be professional here. I'm your boss. There are power dynamics and ethics and about 17 reasons why this is a terrible idea. What's a terrible idea? This. She gestured between them. Whatever this is that I'm pretty sure isn't just in my head. Adrian couldn't breathe. It's not just in your head. Victoria closed her eyes. That's what I was afraid of. Afraid? Yes. Because I don't know what to do about it. She opened her eyes again, and in the fading light, they looked almost black. I hired you because you deserved a chance, because you're good at what you do, and you needed someone to believe in you. But somewhere along the way, it became more than that. When? Adrian asked, because he needed to know, needed to understand if this thing had been building as long for her as it had for him. Honestly, probably the first time you walked into my office looking terrified and told me about Emma. The way you talked about her, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Victoria's voice got quieter. Or maybe it was later, when I'd see you leave at exactly 4 every day to pick her up. Or when you'd come in Monday mornings and tell me about your weekend, and you'd light up talking about the smallest things. Making breakfast, helping with homework. Things other people treat like chores, but you treated like gifts. Adrian didn't know what to say. His throat felt too tight for words. I'm not supposed to feel this way about an employee, Victoria continued. It's inappropriate and complicated, and I could get sued or ruin your career. I'm not going to sue you for having feelings. That's not the point. The point is I'm in a position of power over you. Anything that happens between us, there's always going to be that question of whether it's real or if it's just stop. Adrian surprised himself with how firm his voice came out. Just stop. You think I'm here because you're my boss? You think I'm interested because you sign my paychecks? I don't know. Are you? No. I'm interested because you're the first person in 2 years who's made me feel like a human being instead of a disaster. Because you remember things about Emma. Because you actually listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn. Because you rebuilt an entire company on the idea that people matter more than profits, and you actually meant it. Victoria was staring at him now. And yeah, Adrian continued, you're my boss, and yeah, that's complicated. But don't insult both of us by pretending this is some power dynamic thing. You know it's not. It could still ruin everything. Or it could not. You're being optimistic. That's not like you. I'm terrified, Adrian admitted. I'm scared of screwing this up, of losing the best job I've ever had, of Emma getting attached to you and then you realizing this was a mistake. I'm scared of a lot of things. But I'm more scared of pretending I don't feel what I feel just because it's complicated. Victoria let out a breath that might have been a laugh. When did you get brave? About 30 seconds ago. It's not going to last. She smiled at that, a real smile that made her whole face change. Then slowly, deliberately, she reached over and took his hand. Adrian looked down at their intertwined fingers. Her hand was smaller than his, strong, warm. He'd held it before, but this was different. This was intentional. I don't know how to do this, Victoria said quietly. The whole relationship thing. I'm married to my work. I don't have time for dating or whatever normal people do. I have a 7-year-old and an apartment full of dirty laundry. I don't think either of us qualifies as normal. Fair point. She squeezed his hand. So what do we do? I have no idea. They sat there in the almost dark, holding hands like teenagers, neither of them having any answers, but both of them willing to sit with the questions. Eventually, Victoria spoke again. We should probably get back. The bonfire's starting soon, and Emma's going to wonder where you are. Yeah. But neither of them moved. Adrian? Yeah? I'm glad you're here. I know I already said that, but I mean it. I'm glad I'm here too. She stood up first, pulling him up with her, and for a moment they just stood there facing each other on the dock, hands still connected. Then Victoria let go and started walking back toward the lodge, and Adrian followed, feeling like something fundamental had just shifted under his feet. The bonfire was already roaring when they got back. Kids running around with sparklers under Michelle's supervision, adults settling into camp chairs with drinks and blankets. Adrian found Emma sitting with 2 other girls, all of them with chocolate on their faces from s'mores. Dad, where were you? You missed the first round of stories. Sorry, baby. Had to take a work call. Yeah, it was a terrible lie, and Emma knew it. She gave him a look that said she wasn't buying it, but would let it slide for now. Victoria appeared a few minutes later, taking a seat in one of the camp chairs across the fire from Adrian. Their eyes met over the flames and she smiled. Just a small thing, but it felt like a secret they were sharing. Someone started telling a ghost story that was clearly way too scary for the kids, but they were all pretending to be brave. Emma ended up migrating from her friends to Adrian's lap, pressed against his chest while she watched the storyteller with wide eyes. You okay? He murmured. It's not real, she whispered back. Ghosts aren't real. That's right. But what if they were? Then we deal with it together. She seemed satisfied with that and relaxed against him, and Adrian wrapped his arms around her and tried to focus on the story instead of the way Victoria was looking at them from across the fire. The story ended with a jump scare that made half the kids scream and then dissolve into nervous giggles. Michelle announced one more round of s'mores, then bedtime for the younger kids. Emma protested, but she was already yawning, fighting to keep her eyes open. Come on, Adrian said, standing up with her in his arms, even though she was really getting too big for that. Time for bed. But I'm not tired. You're literally falling asleep right now. No, I'm not. I'm just resting my eyes. Victoria appeared beside them. Emma, if you go to bed now, I'll show you something cool tomorrow morning, but only if you're well rested. Emma perked up slightly. What kind of cool? It's a surprise, but you have to sleep to get it. Is it a pony? It's not a pony. Is it close to a pony? Emotionally, perhaps? Emma considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, I'll go to bed. But you have to promise the surprise is good. I promise. Adrian carried Emma back to their cabin, got her into pajamas despite her continued protests that she wasn't tired, and tucked her into bed. Dad? Her voice was small in the dark. Yeah, baby? Do you like Ms. Hale? Adrian's heart stopped. What? You look at her different, like how you used to look at Mom. He didn't know what to say to that. Couldn't lie to his daughter, but wasn't sure how to tell her the truth. I think she's a good person, he said carefully. That's not what I asked. I know. He brushed her hair back from her forehead. Would it bother you if I did? Like her like that? Emma thought about it for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe. Mom was Mom. Yeah, she was. But she's not coming back. The words were matter of fact, but they still hurt to hear. No, baby, she's not. So maybe it's okay if you like someone else. Emma's eyes were already closing. Miss Hale's nice. She remembered my watermelon. Adrian smiled despite everything. She did. That's important. The watermelon thing. Very important. Emma was asleep before he could say anything else, her breathing evening out into the deep rhythm of childhood sleep. Adrian sat there for another few minutes, just watching her, wondering what the hell he was doing, getting involved with his boss, introducing complications into their life when things were finally stable, risking the best job he'd ever had for something that might not even work out. But then he thought about Victoria's hand in his, the way she'd looked at him on the dock, the fact that she was just as scared as he was but willing to try anyway. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. You still up? Yeah, just put Emma down. Meet me at the dock? Adrian looked at his sleeping daughter, then at his phone, then made a decision that was either very brave or very stupid. Give me 5 minutes. He slipped out of his cabin and made his way through the dark toward the water. Victoria was already there, sitting on the dock with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Hey, she said when he sat down. Hey. She handed him part of the blanket and he took it, their shoulders pressing together under the shared warmth. I've been thinking, Victoria said. That sounds dangerous. Probably, but I do it anyway. She took a breath. I don't know how to make this work. The whole dating my employee thing. But I want to try. If you want to try, I want to try. Even though it's complicated and weird and might blow up in our faces. Especially because of that, Adrian said, and was surprised to find he meant it. Victoria laughed, a real laugh that sounded almost giddy. We're both crazy, you know that? I've been telling myself that for the last hour. They sat there under the shared blanket, looking out at the water that was just a dark shape now, the moon not yet risen. Somewhere behind them, the bonfire was still going, voices carrying across the lawn. Emma asked me if I liked you, Adrian said after a while. Victoria tensed slightly. What did you tell her? That you were a good person. That's not an answer. I know, but she's 7. I didn't know how else to say it. He turned to look at Victoria. She said it would be okay if I did like you, because you remembered her watermelon. The watermelon is key. Apparently, Victoria shifted closer, closing the small gap that had still been between them. I'm going to kiss you now, if that's okay. Adrian's heart was racing. That's okay. She leaned in slowly, giving him plenty of time to pull away, and then her lips were on his, and Adrian forgot how to think about anything else. It was gentle, tentative, both of them careful with each other in a way that spoke to how scared they were of breaking this fragile thing. When she pulled back, they were both breathing harder. Okay, Victoria said. Okay? That was okay. Good. Better than good. Yeah. Adrian agreed, because his brain had apparently shut down completely. She kissed him again, less careful this time, and Adrian let himself fall into it, into her, into this moment that felt both inevitable and impossible. When they finally pulled apart for real, Victoria was smiling. We're really doing this, she said. Apparently. It's a terrible idea. The worst. We're going to have to be so careful. At work, I mean. We can't let people think there's favoritism or... Adrian kissed her again to shut her up and felt her smile against his mouth. We'll figure it out, he said when they broke apart. One thing at a time. When did you become the optimistic one? About 5 minutes ago? Don't get used to it. They stayed on the dock until the bonfire died down and people started heading to bed, wrapped in the blanket and each other, talking about nothing and everything. About Emma and Victoria's nephew and what they were going to tell people and whether this was the smartest decision or the dumbest. Eventually, Adrian had to go back to check on Emma. Victoria walked him to his cabin, their hands linked in the dark where no one could see. "Tomorrow," she said at his door. "Tomorrow," he agreed. She squeezed his hand once more, then disappeared into the night, leaving Adrian standing outside his cabin with his heart racing and his head spinning and a smile he couldn't quite suppress. Inside, Emma was still asleep, curled up with her stuffed rabbit. Adrian got ready for bed quietly, trying not to wake her, and lay there staring at the ceiling trying to process what had just happened. He'd kissed Victoria Hale, his boss, the woman who'd given him a second chance at life, and it had felt right in a way that terrified him. Because this wasn't just about him anymore. Everything he did affected Emma, and if this went wrong, if it imploded, she'd be caught in the fallout. But Victoria had been right about one thing. They were both scared, both taking a risk, both willing to try despite knowing all the ways it could fail. That had to count for something. Adrian closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but all he could think about was the feeling of Victoria's hand in his, her lips on his, the way she'd smiled at him in the dark, like he was something worth smiling about. Tomorrow would bring complications and questions and probably a healthy dose of panic. But tonight, just for tonight, Adrian let himself be happy. Morning arrived with Emma shaking his shoulder at an hour that should be illegal on a Sunday. "Dad, Dad, wake up! Ms. Hale said she had a surprise and I need to know what it is." Adrian cracked one eye open. "What time is it?" 7:30. "That's not morning, that's still night. The sun is up, therefore it's morning. Can we go find her?" Adrian groaned and pulled the pillow over his face. "Give me 10 minutes. "I'll give you 5. She gave him 3, then started poking his ribs until he surrendered and dragged himself out of bed. His brain felt fuzzy, caught between last night's kiss on the dock and the harsh reality of daylight. Had that actually happened? Had he really kissed Victoria Hale, or had he dreamed the whole thing in some stress-induced hallucination? They walked to the lodge together, Emma practically vibrating with anticipation. The dining room was quieter than yesterday, just early risers nursing coffee and looking like they'd stayed up too late at the bonfire. Victoria was there, sitting at a corner table with her laptop open and a mug in her hand. When she saw them, she looked up and smiled, and Adrian's stomach did something complicated. It had definitely happened. "Morning," she said, closing the laptop. "Emma, you ready for your surprise?" "Yes." "What is it? Is it alive? Can I keep it?" "It's alive, and no, you can't keep it, but you can visit." Victoria stood up. "Come on." She led them out back behind the lodge to a small barn that Adrian hadn't even noticed yesterday. Inside were 3 horses, 2 full-sized and one that was barely taller than Emma. "That's Buttons," Victoria said, pointing to the small one. "She's a miniature horse. Very friendly, very gentle, and she loves kids." Emma's face went through about 17 different expressions before landing on pure joy. "Can I pet her?" "You can do more than that. Michelle's going to teach you how to brush her and feed her, and maybe, if you're very good, you can take a short ride around the paddock." Emma looked at Adrian with eyes so wide he thought they might fall out of her head. "Dad, can I please?" "Of course you can, baby." She took off running toward the barn before he could finish the sentence. Adrian turned to Victoria. "You have horses." "The retreat center has horses. I just knew about them." "You planned this. I might have made a phone call last night." She was trying to look casual but failing. "Mentioned that a certain 7-year-old was obsessed with horses, and wouldn't it be nice if she could meet one?" "You didn't have to do that." "I know. I wanted to." Victoria glanced toward the barn where Emma was already chattering to Michelle about Buttons. "Is it too much? I'm not trying to, buy her affection or anything. I just thought, it's perfect," Adrian interrupted. "Seriously, she's going to talk about this for months." Victoria relaxed slightly. "Good. That's good." They stood there in awkward silence for a moment, both of them clearly thinking about last night, but not sure how to acknowledge it in the daylight. "So," Adrian started. "So," Victoria echoed. Yeah. "Are we going to talk about it?" Victoria glanced around to make sure no one was in earshot. "Probably, eventually, when there aren't 40 employees and a dozen children nearby." "Right, that makes sense." Another silence, this one even more awkward than the last. "I should go watch Emma," Adrian said finally. Make sure she doesn't try to smuggle buttons into our cabin. Good idea. I'll see you later at the closing brunch thing. Yeah, later. He walked toward the barn feeling like a complete idiot. They were both adults. They'd kissed. It wasn't the end of the world, except it felt like the end of the world because he had no idea what happened next, and apparently neither did she. Emma spent the next 2 hours in heaven. Michelle showed her how to brush buttons, how to offer treats with a flat palm, how to speak softly and move slowly around the horse. When they finally let her sit on buttons for a walk around the paddock, Emma's face was pure magic. Adrian took about 100 photos, trying to capture this moment where his daughter looked completely, unselfconsciously happy. She's a natural, Michelle said, watching Emma lean forward to pat Buttons' neck. You should think about lessons when you get home. I'll look into it, Adrian said, already mentally calculating costs and wondering if he could make it work. The retreat started winding down after lunch. People packed up their cabins, loaded cars, said goodbyes with promises to see each other Monday. The kids were all trading contact information like tiny business people, making plans for future hangouts. Emma was dragging her feet, literally and figuratively, not wanting to leave. Can we come back? She asked for the 10th time. Maybe next year, Adrian said. That's so far away. It's really not. It feels far. They were loading the last bag into the car when Victoria appeared, looking professional again in dark jeans and a blazer, her hair back in its usual ponytail. Heading out? She asked. Yeah, we should beat traffic if we leave now. Smart. Victoria crouched down to Emma's level. Thanks for coming, kiddo. I had fun hiking with you. Thank you for letting me meet Buttons. She's the best horse in the world. She really is. Maybe next time you can meet the big horses too. Next time? We do this every year. So yeah, next time. Emma threw her arms around Victoria's neck in a hug that clearly surprised both of them. Victoria recovered quickly, hugging her back, and when she looked up at Adrian over Emma's shoulder, there was something soft in her expression that made his chest tight. Okay, Em, Adrian said gently. Let Miss Hale breathe. Emma pulled back, already heading for the car. Bye. See you Monday. See you Monday, Victoria called after her. Then it was just the two of them, standing in the parking lot while people moved around them loading vehicles. This was good, Adrian said. The weekend. All of it. Yeah, it was. Victoria's professional mask slipped for just a second. We should probably talk about everything. When? I don't know. Not at work. That would be weird, yeah. Maybe dinner this week? Just us? Adrian's heart jumped. Like a date? I don't know what else to call it. A date works. Victoria smiled, a real smile that made her look younger. Okay, I'll text you. Dad! Emma was hanging out the car window. Come on. I should go, Adrian said. Yeah, drive safe. He got in the car and pulled out of the parking lot, watching Victoria get smaller in the rearview mirror until she disappeared completely. The drive home felt longer than the drive up. Emma fell asleep in the back seat within 20 minutes, worn out from the weekend, and Adrian was left alone with his thoughts. He'd kissed his boss. Was planning to have dinner with his boss. Was maybe, possibly, starting something with his boss that could either be wonderful or catastrophic with very little middle ground. His phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Victoria. Made it out okay? Almost home. Emma's asleep. She had fun. I could tell. Thanks to you and your secret horse connection. I have many secret connections. Horses are just the beginning. Adrian smiled despite himself. Should I be worried? Definitely. I'm very powerful and slightly terrifying. Noted. Another pause, then. I meant what I said. About dinner. I want to do this right. Me too. Even though it's complicated? Especially because it's complicated. You keep saying that. I'm starting to think you like complications. Adrian thought about it at the next red light, watching the city slide past his windows. Maybe I do. Or maybe I just like you. The response took longer this time. That's really not fair. I'm trying to drive. You texted me first. Also not fair. I'm full of unfair things today. I've noticed. It's annoying. Sorry? No, you're not. Adrian was definitely grinning now, feeling like a teenager with a crush. No, I'm really not. We're going to be terrible at this, aren't we? Probably. But we can be terrible together. That's weirdly romantic. I'm a weirdly romantic guy. Are you, though? Adrian thought about Sarah, about the years they'd had before she got sick, about all the small ways he'd tried to show her he loved her. I used to be. I think I might be again. Victoria's response was just a heart emoji, and Adrian felt it like a physical thing in his chest. They texted on and off for the rest of the drive. Nothing important, just the comfortable back and forth of two people learning each other. By the time Adrian pulled into his apartment complex, his face hurt from smiling. Emma woke up when he turned off the engine, disoriented and grumpy. Are we home? We're home, baby. I don't want to be home. I want to be with Buttons. I know, but Buttons has to stay at the retreat center. Emma pouted but helped carry bags upstairs, still talking about the horse, about the hike, about the bonfire and the kayaking and everything else they'd done. Adrian let her talk while he unpacked, only half listening, his mind on Victoria and dinner and whatever came next. Monday morning felt surreal. Adrian got up at his normal time, made Emma breakfast, walked her to the bus stop. Everything exactly the same as it had been for weeks now, except nothing was the same at all. He was dating his boss. Maybe. Probably. They hadn't actually defined it, but they'd kissed and planned dinner and texted heart emojis, which felt pretty definitional. The office was buzzing when he arrived, everyone still talking about the retreat. People kept stopping by his office to ask if he'd had fun, if Emma enjoyed herself. Wasn't Buttons the cutest thing ever? Adrian smiled and nodded and tried to act normal while his heart raced every time he heard heels in the hallway, wondering if it was her. Victoria appeared around 10, perfectly professional in a navy dress and those shoes that probably cost more than his rent. She stopped at his office door like she stopped at everyone's office door, casual and friendly. Morning? Good weekend? Great weekend, Adrian said, hoping he sounded normal. Emma's already asking when we can go back.
Next year. Tell her to mark her calendar. Victoria's smile was warm but controlled. Got a minute to go over the Jensen project? Sure.
Now? Conference room 3 and 5? I'll be there. She walked away and Adrian let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. This was going to be harder than he thought, pretending everything was normal when all he could think about was the way she'd kissed him on the dock. The meeting was fine. Professional. They talked about timelines and deliverables and budget allocation, and if Adrian's eyes lingered on her mouth a few seconds too long, well, no one else seemed to notice. Afterward, as they were packing up, Victoria's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, frowned, then looked at Adrian. Dinner might have to wait. I've got client meetings every night this week. Oh. Adrian tried not to sound as disappointed as he felt. That's okay. We can figure something else out. Friday? Friday works. I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something nice. How nice? Nice enough that I can't stop looking at you, but not so nice that Emma asks questions. Adrian laughed. That's a very specific dress code. I'm a very specific person. Victoria gathered her files, hesitated at the door. This is okay, right? You're okay with waiting? I've waited 2 years to feel normal again. I can wait a few more days for dinner. Something in her expression softened. You keep saying things like that, and I'm going to kiss you right here in this conference room. Probably not a good idea. Definitely not a good idea. But she was smiling when she left. The week dragged. Work was busy enough to keep Adrian occupied, but every interaction with Victoria felt charged with something unspoken. They were careful, professional, never alone together for more than necessary. But the texts continued. Late at night after Emma was asleep, Adrian would find messages from Victoria. Sometimes about work, sometimes about nothing at all. Can't sleep, too much coffee. That's what happens when you drink coffee at 8 p.m. It was decaf. Decaf still has some caffeine in it. Since when are you a coffee expert? Since I had a newborn and needed to understand my primary food source. Fair point. How's Emma? Asleep. Dreaming about horses, probably. She really loved Buttons. She really did. Thank you again for that. Stop thanking me. I liked seeing her happy. Still, it meant a lot. Adrian? Yeah? I'm nervous about Friday. Adrian stared at his phone, surprised by her honesty. Me too. What if this is a mistake? What if it's not? You're very optimistic lately. It's unsettling. Would you prefer if I panicked?
A little panic might be more realistic. Okay, fine. I'm terrified. Better? Much. At least we're both terrified. We can be terrified together. You keep saying that.
Because it's true. Whatever this is, we're in it together. That makes it less scary. Does it, though? Honestly?
No. But I'm going with it anyway. There was a long pause, then, I really like you, Adrian Cole. I really like you too, Victoria Hale. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Adrian set down his phone and lay in the dark, smiling at the ceiling like an idiot. Thursday afternoon, everything changed.
Adrian was in his office reviewing project updates when Janet from HR stopped by, her face carefully neutral in that way that immediately set off alarm bells. Adrian, do you have a minute? Sure. What's up? She closed the door behind her and sat down, which was even more concerning. I need to talk to you about something sensitive. A concern has been raised. Adrian's stomach dropped. What kind of concern? Someone noticed that you and Ms. Hale have been spending a lot of time together, at the retreat and here in the office, and they're worried there might be inappropriate fraternization. The words hit him like cold water. Who raised this concern? I can't tell you that, but I need to ask you directly. Is there anything going on between you and Ms. Hale that would constitute a conflict of interest? Adrian's mind raced. They hadn't done anything wrong, hadn't even been on a date yet, but they'd kissed, they'd texted, they'd made plans. And now someone had noticed and reported it, and this was exactly the kind of disaster he'd been afraid of. We're friends, he said carefully. She's been supportive as my manager, but there's nothing inappropriate happening. Janet studied him. You're sure about that? Yes. It wasn't technically a lie. Nothing had happened yet. But it felt like a lie, and Janet's expression suggested she thought so too. Okay, I believe you. But Adrian, you need to be careful. Ms. Hale is your boss. Any relationship beyond professional could put both of you in a difficult position. The company has policies about this kind of thing. I understand. Do you? Because if something were to develop, you'd need to report it immediately, and there would be consequences for both of you. Adrian nodded, feeling sick. Janet stood up. I'm not trying to scare you, I'm trying to protect you. And her. Just be smart about this, okay? After she left, Adrian sat there staring at his computer screen without seeing it. Someone had noticed. Someone had reported them for something that hadn't even really started yet. And if they continued, if they went to dinner Friday and someone saw them, if they tried to make this work, they'd be under scrutiny constantly. Every interaction analyzed, every decision questioned. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Janet just left my office. Are you okay? Fine. Just processing. My office. Now. Adrian walked to her office, feeling like he was heading for an execution. Victoria was standing by the window, arms crossed, looking tense. Close the door, she said. He did. Someone complained about us, even though there's no us yet officially. She turned to face him. Janet asked me point blank if we were involved, and I said no, because technically we're not. But I felt like I was lying, and I hate that. I said the same thing. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Victoria's voice was sharp with frustration. We haven't even done anything, and it's already a problem. So what do we do? I don't know. The policies are clear. If we date, we have to disclose it. HR would have to document it. There would be meetings about conflict of interest. You might have to transfer to a different department or report to someone else. Would that be the end of the world? It might be the end of your career here. People would talk. They'd say you slept your way into a promotion or that I'm playing favorites. Everything you've accomplished would be questioned. Adrian felt the weight of it settling on his shoulders. So we can't do this. I didn't say that. You kind of did. Victoria walked over to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume. I'm saying it's complicated. I'm saying there are consequences. I'm not saying it's not worth it. How can you know that? We haven't even been on a date yet. I know because I haven't felt this way about anyone in years. Maybe ever. And I don't want to give that up without even trying. But if trying means destroying both our careers, then we'll figure it out, together, like you keep saying. She reached up and touched his face, gentle. I'm not asking you to risk everything.
I'm asking if you want to try anyway. Adrian closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. This is insane.
Completely. We could lose everything. We could. Or we could have something amazing. You're a terrible influence. I know. She smiled. So, what do you say? Dinner Friday? Full knowledge that we're probably making a huge mistake? Adrian thought about Emma, about the stability they'd finally found, about all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then he thought about Victoria's hand in his on the dock, the way she remembered watermelon preferences, the fact that she'd arranged for his daughter to meet a horse just to see her smile. Yes, he said, dinner Friday. Let's make this huge mistake together. Thank goodness, Victoria let out a breath, because I already made reservations. You what? I made them last Sunday. I was really hoping you'd say yes. Adrian laughed despite everything. You're ridiculous. I'm optimistic. You're the one who's supposed to panic. Oh, I'm panicking, just on the inside where you can't see it. That's very considerate of you. They stood there for another moment, close enough to kiss, but not quite doing it, both of them aware that the office was full of people and someone had already complained. We should probably not stand this close in your office, Adrian said. Probably not. Neither of them moved. Friday, Victoria said finally. We'll figure everything else out then. Friday, Adrian agreed. He left her office and went back to his own, trying to look normal while his brain spiraled through all the possible disasters. This was going to be a mess. A complicated, potentially career-ending mess. But when Friday evening arrived and Adrian was standing in front of his closet trying to figure out what nice but not too nice meant, he realized he didn't care. Didn't care about the policies or the gossip or the risk. He cared about Victoria, about the possibility of something real, and he was willing to bet everything on it. Dad, why are you trying on every shirt you own? Emma was watching from his doorway. I'm not trying on every shirt. You're on number 7. I'm being thorough. You're being weird. Where are you going? Dinner with a friend. Emma's eyes narrowed. What kind of friend? The regular kind. Is it Ms. Hale? Adrian froze with a shirt halfway on. Why would you think that? Because you're acting weird and you only act this weird about her. Emma came into the room and sat on his bed. It's okay if you like her, Dad. I told you that. I know you did, baby, but it's complicated. Why? Because she's my boss, and there are rules about that kind of thing. That's dumb. Maybe, but it's how things work. Emma thought about this. So what are you going to do? I'm going to go to dinner, and we're going to talk, and we'll figure it out from there. And if the rules say you can't be together, Adrian sat down next to her, then we'll deal with that if it happens. But I'm not going to not try just because it's hard. Emma leaned against his shoulder. Mom would say you should do what makes you happy. Yeah, she would. So you should go to dinner and be happy. What about you? Are you happy about this? Emma was quiet for a moment. I think so. Ms. Hale's nice. And you smile more when you talk about her. I like when you smile. Adrian pulled her into a hug, overwhelmed by how perceptive his 7-year-old was. I love you, you know that? I know. I love you too. Now pick a shirt. You look good in the blue one. She was right. He looked good in the blue one. Rachel came at 6:30 to watch Emma, giving Adrian a knowing look that suggested she'd figured out exactly what kind of friend dinner this was. Have fun, she said. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. That's a pretty wide range. I know what I said. Victoria picked him up at 7 exactly, pulling up in a car that was nice but not flashy, wearing a black dress that made Adrian forget how to form words. You look, he started. I know, you too. Get in. The restaurant was downtown, small and intimate with dim lighting and tables spaced far enough apart for actual privacy. Victoria had clearly chosen it carefully. They ordered wine, made small talk about the menu, both of them dancing around what they were really there to discuss. Finally, Victoria set down her wine glass and looked at him directly. Okay, let's talk about this. Really talk. No more dancing around it. Adrian took a breath. Okay. I'm your boss. That's not going to change unless you transfer departments or I promote you into a different reporting structure, both of which would look suspicious now. If we date, we have to disclose it. There will be scrutiny. People will talk. I know all that. I need you to really understand it, Adrian. Your reputation, your career, everything you've built here could be at risk. So could yours. I own the company. I have more protection. That doesn't make it okay. Victoria smiled slightly. No, it doesn't. But it's the reality. She reached across the table and took his hand. So knowing all that, knowing how messy this could get, are you sure you want to do this? Adrian looked at their joined hands, then at her face. At those sharp eyes that had seen through his mess from day one, at the mouth that had smiled at Emma's painting, at the woman who'd given him a chance when no one else would. Yes, he said. I'm sure. Are you? Terrified, but yes. Then we do this, and we do it right. We disclose it, we follow the policies, and we don't give anyone ammunition to say this is inappropriate. And if people still talk, let them talk. As long as we know what this is, that's what matters. Victoria's expression softened. When did you get so brave? I think you're a bad influence. I think you might be right. They spent the rest of dinner talking about logistics, about how they'd tell HR, about what boundaries they needed to maintain at work. It wasn't romantic exactly, but it felt important. Real. After dinner, Victoria drove him home but parked a block away from his apartment. Neighbors, she explained. Right. They sat in the car, neither one moving to get out. This was nice, Victoria said. Weirdly formal and full of policy discussion, but nice. We should do it again sometime. We should. Maybe with less policy talk next time. And more actual date activities. Like what? Adrian thought about it. I don't know. Movies? Mini golf? I'm out of practice with this whole dating thing. Me too. We can be out of practice together. You keep stealing my lines. They're good lines. Adrian leaned across the console and kissed her, soft and slow, tasting wine and possibility. When he pulled back, Victoria was smiling. That's a good way to end a first date, she said. I thought so. See you Monday? See you Monday. He got out of the car and walked the block to his apartment, feeling lighter than he had in days. This was happening. They were doing this. And yes, it was complicated and risky and probably a little bit crazy. But for the first time since Sarah died, Adrian felt like he was choosing something for himself. Not just surviving, not just getting through, but actually reaching for something he wanted. And that felt like everything. Monday morning, Adrian and Victoria sat across from Janet in HR and formally disclosed their relationship. Janet listened without expression, took notes, asked questions about reporting structure and potential conflicts of interest. You understand this will require some adjustments, she said when they finished. Adrian, you'll need to report to David in operations instead of directly to Ms. Hale. All performance reviews, raises, promotions, anything that could be seen as preferential treatment will go through David and be reviewed by the board. I understand, Adrian said. And you're both comfortable with this level of scrutiny? Victoria spoke up. We wouldn't be here if we weren't. Janet made another note. Okay, I'll draft the documentation and send it to you both for review. In the meantime, keep things professional at work. No public displays of affection, no closed-door meetings alone unless work-related, and be aware that people will be watching. They already are, Adrian said. Then don't give them anything to watch. Walking out of Janet's office, Adrian felt like he'd just survived an interrogation. Victoria walked beside him, maintaining careful distance, her face unreadable. That was fun, she said quietly when they were out of earshot. So much fun. We should do it again sometime. How about never? Never works for me. They separated at the elevators, Victoria heading to 14 and Adrian to 12. Professional, appropriate. Exactly what they were supposed to do. It didn't stop Adrian from missing her the moment she was gone. The office gossip started within hours. Adrian could feel it in the way conversation stopped when he walked into the break room, in the looks people exchanged, in the careful way his coworkers suddenly treated him. David pulled him aside after lunch. So, you and Victoria. Yeah. That's bold. That's one word for it. David leaned against the wall, studying him. You know people are going to assume the worst, right? That you slept your way into this job, that she's playing favorites, all of it. Let them assume. That doesn't bother you? Of course it bothers me. But what am I supposed to do? Not date someone I care about because people might talk? Adrian met his eyes. I've spent 2 years being scared of everything. I'm tired of it. David nodded slowly. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I think you're good at your job. Whatever happens between you two, that doesn't change. Thanks. That actually helps. Just don't make me regret saying it. The next few weeks were a careful dance. At work, Adrian and Victoria maintained strict professionalism. They attended meetings together, but always with other people present. They emailed instead of texting during business hours. They were so careful it almost hurt. But outside of work, they carved out moments. Dinner on Fridays became a standing thing. Victoria started coming to Emma's piano recitals, sitting in the back, applauding politely, never making a big deal about it. Adrian met her nephew at a soccer game and watched Victoria transform into someone softer, more playful. Emma warmed to Victoria slowly, carefully, the way she approached everything since losing her mom. She'd ask questions. Why did Ms. Hale like that restaurant? Did Ms. Hale know how to braid hair? Was Ms. Hale going to be at dinner again this week? You can call her Victoria, you know, Adrian said one night. If you want to, you don't have to keep calling her Ms. Hale. Emma considered this seriously. But she's your boss. She's also my girlfriend. That's weird. Yeah, it kind of is. Does she like being called Ms. Hale? I don't know. You could ask her. The next Friday, when Victoria picked them up for dinner, Emma climbed into the back seat and said, Hi, Victoria. Victoria glanced at Adrian, then back at Emma in the rearview mirror. Hi, Emma. That's new. Dad said I could call you that, if you want. I want. Ms. Hale makes me feel like I'm at work. Do you think about work a lot? Probably too much. Your dad tells me I need hobbies. What's a hobby? Something you do for fun that's not work. Emma thought about this. Do you have fun? Victoria was quiet for a moment. I'm learning how. Your dad's a good teacher. Adrian felt something warm spread through his chest. He reached over and took Victoria's hand just for a moment before she needed it back to drive. 3 months in, things felt almost normal. The office gossip had died down to a low hum. Adrian's work was solid, his reviews from David consistently positive. Emma had started horseback riding lessons, Victoria's doing, though she'd pretended it was just a suggestion when Adrian protested the cost. Consider it a late birthday present, she'd said. Emma's birthday was in January. A very late birthday present, but normal didn't mean easy. Victoria worked long hours, often bringing her laptop to dinner and answering emails between courses. Adrian struggled with the balance of being present for Emma while also making time for this new relationship, and they both felt the weight of constant scrutiny, the knowledge that one mistake could unravel everything. The first real fight happened on a Wednesday night in October. Victoria had promised to come to Emma's art show at school. She'd marked it on her calendar, confirmed that morning that she'd be there. But at 6:30, when the show started, she wasn't there. At 7, when Emma's watercolor won 3rd place, Victoria still wasn't there. Adrian clapped for his daughter, took photos, smiled through the ceremony. But inside, he was furious. Victoria showed up at 7:45, breathless and apologetic, just as people were leaving. I'm so sorry. Client emergency. I couldn't get away. You missed it, Adrian said quietly. She won 3rd place. I'll congratulate her. Where is she? Bathroom, with Rachel. Victoria looked around at the emptying gym, the art still hanging on the walls. Adrian, I'm really sorry. I tried to get here, but you had work. I know. It's fine. It's clearly not fine. What do you want me to say, Victoria? That it's okay? That Emma's not going to notice you weren't here? I said I was sorry. What else can I do? You can actually show up when you say you're going to show up. Victoria's expression hardened. That's not fair. You know I had a client crisis. I can't just walk out of meetings because my daughter has an art show? Yeah, I get it. Work comes first. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. Emma emerged from the bathroom, saw Victoria, and her face lit up before carefully shuddering. Hi, you came. I did. I'm sorry I was late, sweetheart. I heard you won 3rd place. That's amazing. It's okay. You were working. Emma's voice was small, understanding, and that made it worse somehow. They drove home in tense silence. Victoria tried to come in, but Adrian said he needed to put Emma to bed. Maybe they could talk tomorrow. She left looking hurt and angry, and Adrian felt both vindicated and terrible. He helped Emma get ready for bed, praised her painting, told her how proud he was. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Victoria really was working, Emma said. It's not her fault. I know, baby. You're mad at her, though. I'm frustrated. That's different.
Is she going to leave like Mom did? Adrian's heart broke. Mom didn't leave on purpose, Em. She was sick. But she left. And now Victoria might leave too because you're mad. Victoria's not going anywhere. We just had a disagreement. People who care about each other still disagree sometimes. But what if? No what ifs, I promise. We're going to figure this out. After Emma was asleep, Adrian sat on the couch staring at his phone. Victoria had texted twice. I really am sorry. Can we talk about this? He typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on, tomorrow. I need to cool down first. Okay. I love you. Adrian stared at those 3 words. They'd been saying it for a few weeks now, usually before bed or after particularly good moments. But seeing it in text, after a fight, felt different. I love you too. That's not the problem. Then what is? I don't know. I'll figure it out and we'll talk tomorrow. But he did know. The problem was that Victoria's work would always come first, the same way Emma would always come first for him. And he didn't know how to make those 2 priorities fit together without someone getting hurt. They met for coffee the next morning, both of them tired and defensive. I can't always drop everything, Victoria started. You know that. You knew that getting into this. I'm not asking you to drop everything. I'm asking you to show up when you promised to show up, especially for Emma. I tried. The client, there's always going to be a client, Victoria, always going to be an emergency. But Emma's 7 years old and she's already learned that adults don't keep their promises. I don't want her to learn that from you too. Victoria flinched. That's not fair. Maybe not, but it's true. Adrian ran his hands through his hair. Look, I get it. I know your work is important, but Emma's important too. And if you can't make time for her, then maybe we need to rethink this. You're giving me an ultimatum? I'm telling you what I need, what she needs. And what about what I need? I built this company from nothing, Adrian. I can't just walk away from it whenever there's a school event. I'm not asking you to walk away from it. I'm asking you to find balance. That's rich coming from you. You quit your last job because you couldn't find balance. The words landed like a slap. Adrian sat back, stung. You're right, he said quietly. I couldn't find balance because the system was broken. But I thought you were different. I thought your whole thing was about making work and life compatible, not forcing people to choose. It is. I am. But I'm also trying to run a company and apparently be a perfect girlfriend and a perfect stand-in mom, and I can't be all of those things perfectly all the time. No one's asking you to be perfect. Aren't you, though? You're mad because I missed one event. I'm mad because you promised and didn't show. And because this won't be the last time. There will always be another client, another emergency, another reason why work has to come first. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. So what do you want me to do? I don't know. I honestly don't know. They sat there in miserable silence, both of them too stubborn to bend, both of them too scared to walk away. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice softer. I don't want to lose you, either of you. Then we need to figure this out, really figure it out, not just keep skating by until the next crisis. Okay, how? Adrian thought about it. Boundaries, real ones. You block off time for Emma's important stuff and you don't schedule over it. Client emergency or not, you find someone else to handle it. And if I can't, then you can't. But you try. That's all I'm asking, that you try. Victoria nodded slowly. I can try. I want to try. But Adrian, you have to understand, my work isn't just a job. It's who I am. I can't just turn it off. I'm not asking you to turn it off. I'm asking you to turn toward us sometimes too. I think I can do that. Think or no? No. I know I can do that. She reached across the table for his hand. I'm sorry I missed the art show. I'm sorry I hurt Emma, and I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I compared you to Sarah's death. That wasn't fair.
It kind of was, though. Emma's scared of people leaving, I get that. I should have thought about how it would feel to her when I didn't show. They sat there holding hands across the coffee shop table, working through it, both of them trying despite the fear and frustration. Are we okay? Victoria asked. We're getting there. Good. Because I really do love you. Both of you. We love you too, even when you're frustrating. Especially when I'm frustrating. That's not how that works. Victoria smiled. I'm making it work anyway. 2 months later, the annual shareholder meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. Victoria had been stressed about it for weeks, practicing her presentation, running numbers, barely sleeping. The night before, she'd stayed at Adrian's apartment until midnight. Emma, long asleep, just going over slides one more time. You're going to be great, Adrian had told her. You don't know that. I do. You're always great, even when you're terrified. I'm not terrified. You're literally shaking. That's just coffee. Victoria. She'd stopped, looked at him. Okay, fine, I'm terrified. Happy? Not particularly, but I'm glad you admitted it. He'd pulled her into his arms. You built an amazing company. The numbers speak for themselves. Just go in there and tell them what you told me. What did I tell you? That people matter more than profits, and somehow you've managed to have both. The meeting was at 2. Adrian didn't have any reason to be there. He wasn't senior enough, didn't have a stake in the company beyond his salary, but he found himself checking his phone constantly, waiting for updates. At 3:30, his phone rang. Victoria. How'd it go? They want to buy me out. Adrian's stomach dropped. What? The board. Well, some investors brought in new board members, and they've got the votes, and they want to buy me out. Take the company in a different direction. Can they do that? Legally? Yes, if they have the votes. Her voice was shaking. I built this company, Adrian. It's mine. And they're just going to take it and turn it into exactly what I was trying not to be. Where are you? My office. I'm coming up. You don't have to. I'm coming up. He found her standing at her window, looking out at the city, her shoulders rigid with tension. When she heard him come in, she didn't turn around. They made it sound reasonable, she said. Very generous buyout package. Opportunity to pursue other interests. They even said I could stay on as a consultant. She laughed bitterly. A consultant for my own company. Adrian came to stand next to her. What did you say? I said I needed time to think about it. But you already know what you want to say. Yeah. She finally looked at him. I want to tell them to go to hell. But that's not how business works. Why not? Because I'd be walking away from a fortune. Because they have the votes, and if I fight them, I might lose everything anyway. Because maybe they're right, and I can't run a billion-dollar company on feelings and good intentions. Do you believe that? I don't know what I believe anymore. Victoria sank into her desk chair. I'm so tired, Adrian. Tired of fighting, of proving myself, of trying to do the impossible. Adrian pulled up a chair next to her. What's the impossible part? All of it. Building a company that cares about people in a world that only cares about money. Being good at my job and good in a relationship. Having a life outside of this. She gestured at the office. Maybe they're right. Maybe I can't have it all. That's bullshit and you know it. Victoria looked surprised. Adrian rarely swore. You've been doing it all for 8 years, he continued. You built something that proves it's possible to care about people and make money. And yeah, it's hard. But that doesn't make it impossible. The numbers don't lie, Adrian. They want more growth, faster expansion, higher profits. And they're right that we could get that if we cut some of the programs. The childcare stipends, the flexible hours, the mental health coverage, the things that make this place different from everywhere else. The things that are expensive. The things that saved my life. Adrian took her hand. Victoria, when you hired me, I was drowning, couldn't keep a job, couldn't be there for my daughter, couldn't see a way forward. You gave me all of that back. Not because it was profitable, but because it was right. That's a nice sentiment, but nothing. You think I'm the only one? Look around this office. Look at the people who work here. Half of them have stories like mine. Single parents, people with chronic illnesses, caregivers, people who just need flexibility to be human beings. You gave them that. Victoria's eyes were wet. It might not be enough. Then make it enough. Fight for it.
I don't know if I can win. Maybe not, but you can try.
And if you lose, at least you'll lose being yourself instead of becoming what they want you to be. She was quiet for a long time, just holding his hand, staring at the desk. I'm scared, she said finally. I know. Me too. Of what? That you'll lose everything trying to fight this. That even if you win, you'll burn out doing it. That I'm giving you advice that's going to cost you everything you've built. Adrian squeezed her hand. But I'm more scared of watching you give up on what you believe in. Victoria stood up suddenly, pacing. If I fight this and lose, I'm out. Completely. No job, no company, no safety net. You'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We? Adrian, this isn't your problem. Yes, it is. Because I love you and I'm not letting you face this alone. She stopped pacing, looked at him. You really mean that? Yes. Even though it could get messy? Especially because it could get messy. I'm getting good at messy. Victoria laughed, a real laugh that sounded almost hysterical. This is insane. I'm about to wage war with my own board over a company I might lose anyway, and you're telling me to do it. I'm telling you to be yourself. The rest is just details. She crossed the room and kissed him, hard and desperate and grateful. Okay. I'll fight. Yeah? Yeah, but I'm going to need help, a lot of help. Legal, strategic, probably emotional support when I inevitably panic. I can do emotional support. The rest we'll find. We? We. I told you, you're not doing this alone. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Victoria brought in lawyers, went through documents, built a case for why the company should stay on its current trajectory. Adrian helped where he could, running numbers, proofreading presentations, just being there when she needed to vent or cry or throw things. The office knew something was happening, but not what. Rumors swirled. Adrian kept his head down and his work solid, knowing that any misstep would be used as ammunition. Emma noticed Victoria was stressed, started drawing pictures to cheer her up. Small things, flowers, rainbows, a horse that looked suspiciously like buttons. Victoria kept them all on her desk, visible during every video call with board members. The emergency shareholder meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday in early December. Victoria would present her case, the board would present theirs, and the shareholders would vote. The night before, Victoria showed up at Adrian's apartment at 9 with takeout and looked exhausted. You should eat, she said, unpacking containers. Emma already ate? Hours ago. She's asleep. Good. I brought her favorite anyway, for tomorrow. Victoria, you didn't have to. I wanted to. I might not have a job after tomorrow, but I'll still have you two. I wanted to remember that. Adrian pulled her into his arms. You're going to be fine. Your presentation is solid, your case is strong, and they have the votes. We counted. Even with the shareholders on our side, the board can push this through. So what are you going to do? She pulled back, and there was something fierce in her eyes. I'm going to make them listen anyway. Make it public enough that they can't just quietly push me out. Make shareholders understand what they're voting for. That's risky. Everything's risky. She kissed him softly. But at least I'll go down fighting. The meeting was at 2, but Victoria was at the office by 7, running through slides one more time. Adrian couldn't be there, conflict of interest, HR said, so he worked from his own office and tried not to watch the clock. At 1:45, his phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Wish me luck. You don't need luck. You've got this. Love you. Love you too. Go remind them who built that company. 3 hours of silence. Adrian couldn't focus on work, couldn't think about anything except Victoria in that conference room, fighting for everything she'd built. At 5:15, she finally called. How'd it go? Adrian asked immediately. They voted. And? Victoria's voice was strange, like she couldn't quite believe it. They voted to keep current leadership. The shareholders overrode the board's recommendation. Adrian sat down hard. You won? I won. Well, we won. The company stays as is. The board members who pushed for the buyout are resigning, and I get to keep doing this crazy thing where we actually care about people. Victoria, that's amazing. It was your drawings. What? Emma's drawings. I had them on the desk during the presentation, and one of the shareholders asked about them, and I told them my boyfriend's daughter draws them to cheer me up when work is hard. And then I told them about you, about Emma, about how this company gave you both a second chance at a real life. Her voice broke slightly. I made it personal. Showed them that these policies aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're people's lives. Adrian couldn't speak, his throat too tight. I'm coming over, Victoria said. I need to see you, both of you. We'll be here. She showed up 30 minutes later, still in her meeting clothes but disheveled, and Adrian barely got the door open before she was kissing him. When they finally broke apart, Emma was standing in the hallway in her pajamas, watching them. Did you win? Emma asked. Victoria knelt down to her level. I won. Thanks to you. I didn't do anything. You drew me pictures. That's everything. Emma looked pleased and embarrassed. They're just drawings. They're reminders of what matters. That's better than just drawings. Victoria pulled something from her bag. I brought you something. An early Christmas present. It was a photo in her frame, Victoria and Emma at the retreat, standing next to Buttons, both of them smiling. When did you take this? Adrian asked. Michelle sent it to me. I had it printed. Victoria looked at Emma. I wanted you to know that even when work gets crazy, I'm still thinking about you, about both of you. Emma hugged her, fierce and tight, and Victoria's eyes met Adrian's over his daughter's head, wet and grateful. That night, after Emma went to bed, Adrian and Victoria sat on the couch, her head on his shoulder, both of them too tired to move. I can't believe we pulled that off, Victoria said. You pulled it off. We. You helped. Emma helped. I couldn't have done it alone. You're going to have to work with a bunch of angry board members now. They'll resign. I'll replace them with people who actually share the vision. She shifted to look at him. I want you to be one of them. Adrian blinked. What? Board member. You know the company, you understand what we're trying to do, and you have perspective I need. Victoria, I've been here less than a year. So? You've already made this place better. David told me your team has the highest satisfaction scores in the company. People actually like working with you. That's not the same as being qualified to be on a board. Why not? Boards are full of people with fancy degrees who've never actually worked a day at the level of the people they're making decisions about. You have. You know what employees need because you were one, because you are one. Adrian thought about it. People will talk. Let them. They'll say you're playing favorites. You'll be reporting to David, not me, and you'll have earned it, but I'm not going to push if you're not ready. I didn't say I wasn't ready. I said people will talk. Is that a yes? It's a let me think about it and also probably yes. Victoria smiled. I'll take it. They sat there in comfortable silence, and Adrian thought about how far they'd come. From a desperate job interview to this, a relationship that had survived scrutiny and fights and corporate warfare. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still worked too much. Adrian still worried too much. Emma still sometimes woke up scared that the people she loved would disappear, but they were figuring it out. Together. 6 months later, in early summer, things had settled into a new rhythm. Adrian was officially on the board, which meant even more scrutiny, but also more ability to shape policy. He'd pushed for expanded parental leave, better mental health coverage, and a program to help employees afford childcare. Victoria had hired 3 new board members who actually understood the company's mission. Profits were up, employee retention was higher than ever, and she'd been featured in 3 major business magazines as an example of human-centered leadership. Emma was thriving. Her grades were good, she had friends, and she'd stopped asking if people were going to leave. She still missed her mom, they both did, but the grief had shifted from overwhelming to manageable. A permanent part of them, but not the defining part. One Saturday in June, Victoria suggested a picnic by the lake. The same lake from the retreat, though this time it was just the 3 of them. They found a spot under a tree, spread out a blanket, and Emma immediately ran to the water's edge to look for frogs. She's so big, Victoria said, watching her. She was tiny when we met. She's growing up fast. Too fast. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Emma splash in the shallow water, her laughter carrying across the lake. I've been thinking, Victoria said. That sounds dangerous.
Probably, but hear me out. She turned to face him. I want this to be permanent. You, me, Emma. I want us to be a family. Adrian's heart stopped. Are you? I'm not proposing. Not yet. I want to do that right when the time comes. But I'm telling you that this is it for me. You're it. And I want Emma to know that too, that I'm not going anywhere. She already knows that. Does she, though? Or is she still waiting for me to leave like everyone else has? Adrian thought about his daughter, about the careful way she still sometimes held herself apart, protecting herself from more loss. Maybe a little, he admitted. Then I want to show her, move in together, merge our lives completely, let her see that I'm here for the long haul. That's a big step. I know. And if it's too soon, we can wait. But Adrian, I'm 31 years old. I've dated enough to know when something is right. This is right? You're right. Emma's right. I don't want to waste time being careful when I already know what I want. Adrian looked at this woman who'd given him a second chance, who'd fought for her company because it was the right thing to do, who'd learned to love his daughter like her own. My lease is up in 2 months, he said. Is that a yes? That's a yes. Let's do this crazy thing. Victoria kissed him, soft and sweet, and Emma saw from the water's edge and came running. What are you doing? Kissing your dad. Gross. Agreed, Adrian said. Very gross. Emma giggled and Victoria pulled her into the hug, all three of them tangled together on the blanket. And Adrian thought about Sarah, about what she'd say if she could see them now. She'd be happy. He knew that. Happy that he'd found someone who made him laugh again, who showed up for Emma, who understood that loving them meant loving all their broken pieces. Can we get ice cream after this? Emma asked. Absolutely, Victoria said. The good kind with the chocolate chips? Is there any other kind? Emma ran back to the water, already forgetting about them, secure in the knowledge that they'd be there when she got back. She's going to be okay, Victoria said quietly. Yeah, I think she is. Adrian took her hand. We all are. 2 months later, they moved into a house with a yard big enough for Emma to play in and a spare room that Victoria immediately claimed as a home office. Emma got to pick the paint color for her room, purple, obviously, and insisted on hanging all of her drawings on the walls. The first night in the new house, after boxes were unpacked and Emma was asleep in her purple room, Adrian and Victoria sat on the back porch looking at stars. This is real, Victoria said, like she couldn't quite believe it. Very real. I have a family, an actual family. You always had family, your parents, your nephew. That's different. This is mine. Ours. Something we chose. She leaned against him. I never thought I'd have this. I was so focused on building the company, proving I could do it, that I forgot there was more to life. And now? Now I remember. Every morning when Emma asks me to make her pancakes, and every night when you fall asleep on the couch, watching TV, and every moment in between. She turned to look at him. Thank you for reminding me. I didn't do anything. You showed up to an interview terrified and honest and desperate for a chance, and you made me want to give you that chance, made me remember why I built this company in the first place. To make money? To prove that caring about people and success aren't mutually exclusive, that you can build something meaningful without destroying yourself in the process. Adrian thought about where he'd been a year and a half ago, standing in his kitchen, watching Emma hold his car keys, realizing he couldn't keep going the way he was going. If someone had told him then that he'd end up here, in a house with a yard, in a relationship with the CEO who hired him, actually happy, he never would have believed it. But here he was. Here they were. I love you, he said, just in case I haven't said it enough today. You've said it 3 times, but I'll never get tired of hearing it. I love you, he said again. I love you too. They sat there under the stars, in the house they'd chosen together, and Adrian let himself believe in second chances. In the possibility that loss didn't have to be the end of the story. That sometimes, if you were brave enough to keep trying, you got another chapter. Inside, Emma rolled over in her sleep, surrounded by purple walls and drawings, and the quiet knowledge that she was safe, that her dad was happy, that Victoria wasn't going anywhere. And in the morning, they'd wake up and make pancakes and argue about whether 3 was too many and laugh about it afterward.
They'd go to the park or stay home or do nothing at all, but they'd do it together. Because that's what families did. The messy, imperfect, beautiful work of showing up for each other every single day. Not because it was easy, not because it was smooth or perfect or without struggle, but because it was worth it, because they were worth it. And that, Adrian thought, as Victoria's hand found his in the dark, was everything. Years passed. Emma grew up in that house with the purple room, surrounded by two people who loved her fiercely and imperfectly. She learned that families come in all shapes, that love can be found after loss, and that sometimes the best things in life come from taking chances. Adrian thrived in his role on the board, shaping policies that helped other parents like him find balance. He never forgot what it felt like to be drowning, and he made sure no one else at Hale Industries would have to drown either. Victoria built the company into something even bigger than she'd imagined, but never lost sight of why she'd built it. The human-centered approach became industry standard, copied by competitors, studied in business schools. She proved that you could care about people and still succeed wildly. And together, the three of them, they built something that couldn't be measured in profits or achievements or any traditional metric of success. They built a home, a family, a life that worked not despite its complications, but because of them. Emma went to college eventually, called home every Sunday, brought friends to visit who were amazed that her dad and stepmom still held hands at dinner. She grew into a woman who believed in second chances because she'd lived one. Adrian and Victoria got married in a small ceremony by the same lake where they'd had their first real conversation. Emma stood between them during the vows, holding both their hands, and no one questioned whether she belonged there. Because she did. They all did. And on quiet nights, when the house was still, and Emma was out with friends, and it was just the two of them, Victoria would look at Adrian and say, "Can you believe this is our life?" And Adrian would pull her close and answer, "Every single day." Because the life they'd built, the one that started with a desperate interview and a woman willing to take a chance, was more than either of them had dared to hope for. It was messy and complicated and required constant work. It was also perfect, not because nothing went wrong, not because it was easy, but because they chose it every day, together. And that choice, that simple, complicated, beautiful choice to keep showing up for each other, made all the difference.